Check, check, check. Can you hear me, sir?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. There he is. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tipster to the stream.
How's it going?
Good, man. I guess welcome Tipster stream to my stream as well, correct? You're streaming.
Yeah, I told you I have like the worst memory. I lit up a stream to like play some games, and then I totally forgot about this.
I saw you were playing Resident Evil, which, by the way, I don't know if you see on my stream, but I'm repping the Leon cut tonight from Resident Evil 2.
I saw that. I saw you had the hoodie and everything. It was great.
Yeah, man. I told you I'm a huge Resident Evil fan, dude. Big time Resident Evil fan.
Nice. So you'll get along with me and my community quite nicely then.
Yeah. So I guess I'll be interviewing you, kind of like an interview, but more like a casual conversation. Picking your brain a little bit about some things. I wanted to start off though with just Resident Evil talk, if that's cool.
Sure, whatever you got in mind.
All right. So obviously, I feel like we're around the same age. So we probably grew up on the first Resident Evil games. I'm going to fix this stream, though, real quick. What, in your personal opinion, is your favorite Resident Evil game to play?
Oh, that's easy. It's the original Resident Evil 2. That's literally like my favorite like video game of all time.
And then a follow-up question. Did you ever get the chance to play it in VR?
I did not. Unfortunately, like I get crazy motion sick with VR, so I didn't get a chance to play it, unfortunately.
Oh man, dude, I'm telling you, I played what's it called? Number 2 in VR, and it was like being in there is absolutely insane, dude. It was just like I can't even really put it into words, but you're like it. Okay, so you have to play the new version of it, like the re-release, because I guess the guys who mod it tend to like need you to what's the word I'm looking for? You got to be behind him to be able to, I guess, manipulate the way that the programming is to be able to have the VR connect to where the eyes of the character are. Does that make sense?
Right.
And then
yeah.
Then you have the trigger fingers, and you can pull them up, and you can actually look at your hands, and you can like move your hands, and you're wearing Leon's gloves and everything, so you basically are him. I don't know even how these people have figured out how to do this, to be honest with you. It's like insane to me.
Yeah, it sounds super cool. I think one of the things I liked when it comes to like the modding community is when they did the mod for the RE2 remake, so it plays like the classic games. I loved that so much. Did you see that mod, the fixed cam mod?
I have not seen that one, but I do know that you could play. See, I'm a VR snob. Like I just really enjoy playing VR, and I have an idea here. I just play mostly VR games because I started off doing VR and like flight sim type stuff because I've always been a huge military buff fan. But I know that you could play both VR versions of Resident Evil. So I guess the fixed cam on Resident Evil 2 is how they were able to loop back to the VR stuff, if that makes sense.
Interesting. But yeah, if you're a fan of like the OG ones, you definitely got to try the fixed cam mod sometime. It's so good.
Yeah, I would definitely love to try that out. Yeah, so I think you're not the first person I've heard to say that you have issues with the VR motion sickness stuff. And what I found helps for anybody who goes through that is you just got to do it in like small increments to get used to, the jolt to your senses, because it really does feel real. So like that's why you're getting that motion sickness,
Right.
Do you have motion sickness in other aspects of your life, or is it just
It's just video games. Well, also like watching like certain types of movies that have like a lot of like shaky camera and stuff too can do it. So basically like any media consumption where the camera just moves a lot.
Okay, I gotcha. So
Yeah.
when was the first time you played Resident Evil, and were you always like, yeah, this is it, this is my game here?
So actually, the week that the first one came out, I had a friend who lived down the street from me, and he got it. And I remember like watching him play it, and like instantly I was like hooked. So I've been like a fan of this franchise since the very first game, back in '96.
Awesome. And now, like, you exclude you like only play Resident Evil, correct? Is that what I've understood now about your channels that you exclusively play like only Resident Evil now?
I play some other games, but it does tend to be the case that most of the time I'm playing Resident Evil. Yeah, but like I venture into like other. It's mostly retro stuff. Is the way I would put it.
Okay. Okay. So you're like, did you grow up on like Angry Video Game Nerd and like a couple
I
like
did. I did. I feel like my generation of content creator, we all got inspired by Angry Video Game Nerd to make content. Like it's funny, like so many of the people that started when I started making content, they were really into Angry Video Game Nerd and they wanted to have it like a similar gaming channel. So they started out as like gaming channels and then like over time they just like gradually progressed to like something else. But yeah, that was definitely the start of me as a content creator, is really liking the Angry Video Game Nerd and like originally doing my own content in a similar fashion.
you know, the crazy thing about James Rolfe is that like his content still holds up to this day. Like you can go watch his stuff that we were watching when we were back in like the late 2000s, and still it still has that entertainment value that hooked us in when he first made it.
hmm I think when it comes to like the original stuff, like you said, we were watching back then, absolutely. I'm not so much a fan of the newer stuff because part of the appeal of his content is the fact that it had that very personal sort of independent underground feel to it, because it was very like, the quality was very rough, and like the editing, you can tell it was just like one guy editing this stuff on his own. um that had a lot of appeal to it. It was a very like guerrilla style filmmaking.
Hmm.
I guess that would be the term. So that was part of the appeal, and now that he works with like Screenwave Media and it's a lot more polished now, it just doesn't feel the same anymore. So I don't really vibe much with the newer stuff, but I could definitely go back and watch the old stuff anytime.
Yeah, I can understand that because it was like the I would never say that he had like a shisty setup per se, but like it was much more like that, had that VHS home video feel to it that
Yeah, yeah.
you don't quite get that anymore. Like he's been able to figure out like um the gist of, you know, that Hollywood look. I think he's just been exposed to production for so long that he just knows how to run a show now, you know, and make it look crisp. It's like almost like a TV show at this point. Hey, what's up, Moreau?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's part of the overall appeal of like YouTube in the beginning, right? Is that everybody had that sort of like very homegrown feel to their content. So, um I feel like old heads like me, they got started in YouTube early. Like a lot of this new, more polished stuff just doesn't really appeal to us as much as the older stuff did.
You know what's crazy too? It's like I almost feel like there's still a market for that old style vibe of like, you know, like the scratchy VHS you know, tape. There's this guy who I met through a friend who watches the show, and he does like horror stuff. He talks about nothing but like horror like related movies and horror related like paranormal stuff. And I said to her, I was like, why don't you tell him to like up his, you know, quality a little bit? And he said, I appreciate his like the insight, but like I'm going for like that old school, you know, Friday the 13th original feel to it, which I kind of love. You know, it's like nostalgic watching that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That reminds me of you ever heard of a creator known as LGR, Lazy Game Reviews?
Uh, that name sounds familiar, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
A lot of what he used to do was like reviewing like old computers and stuff like that. But one of the things I loved about the early days of his content, and he's one of the ones where like he's upped his like production value and it's still like good content. Like I still enjoy it. So it's not like AVGN where like the newer, more polished stuff, I don't really fuck with it. But when he first started, he was going for that very like home video feel as well, to the point that he actually filmed all his videos with an old VHS camera and
Mm-hmm.
then he would digitize the footage, and it just was really cool, the aesthetic that his videos had.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Um, Going back to like some of the Resident Evil stuff. Did you prefer the tank controls compared to like the behind the back 3D like third person shooter? Did you have a preference for that?
Um, the funny thing is about that, because there's a lot of people who obviously they complain about the tank controls. First of all, in my community, we have a saying that if you're complaining about the tank controls, it's just because you're doing it wrong. It's a skill issue. That's number
Mm-hmm.
one. But number two, if you really look at the way the newer games play, there's still tank controls. It just doesn't feel like it because the camera angle has changed, the perspective has changed. But if you really look at the way you control the game, it's still very much like a tank control style. Um, but to answer your question though, I love the tank controls. Once you've played them as long as I have, you kind of get used to them.
Yeah, I remember the first time you sit down and play that game, you're like, what am I like you miss like half your first clip and you're like, why am I missing from? You can't shoot like from across the room unless you're like you're really used to it. And then like did you always when you played the first game, did you play as Jill or did you play as Chris?
I'm pretty sure I started the first game as Jill.
Yeah, you had to get that
Yeah.
gun. You had to have that Beretta instead of
Yeah.
instead of just running away when the first. I think it's always funny. Like Chris is supposed to be like this badass. And the first time he sees a zombie, everybody just runs away. Ah!
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's kind of hard not to when all you're working with is a knife, and the knife isn't like super effective in the first game.
No, I don't. I don't feel like they're very effective in a lot of the games. I guess later on though. You know what? I did just stream the entire Resident Evil 7 Biohazard game in VR for my stream during Halloween, and it is so fun because that game is designed to be like a horror movie. You know.
Hmm.
And everybody was getting really into it, except like the problem is since it was modded, like even though you could play it on PS, I think you could play it on PS4 in the like the PlayStation VR version, but when you moved it over to PC, it there's some of the buttons just, and I use a Pimax, which is like I guess it's not as common because it's a higher end VR. Some of the controls just didn't work. So like if I'm trying to like, did you play those games, Biohazard?
No, I've watched other people play those because again, like the first person perspective, it like made me super motion sick or whatever.
Even
But
on
I kind of
2D?
watched like streamers and let's players play it.
Wow, even on 2D it gets you, huh?
Wait, which one are you referring to? Maybe I'm confused. I thought you were talking about seven.
Yeah, 7. Where you're Ethan Winters.
Yeah, because that first person perspective, it really fucks with you if
Um,
you have motion sickness problems like I do.
so I guess that goes with Call of Duty and stuff too. You have a hard time playing those games too.
I
Uh,
used to like to play those, and I played them pretty frequently. But it just seems like as I've gotten older, like the whole motion sickness thing has just gotten worse.
I
So
gotcha. I gotcha.
yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, I'm planning on streaming the last one, The Village 2 in VR too. It's just I don't know. I get so I like ever since I was a kid, I always had that imagination. I'd immerse myself in these games, and then being able to strap on the VR and actually feel like I am the guy is like a dream come true for someone like me.
Yeah.
So I've always just really really loved that. But going back to what I was saying, yeah, so like the modding sometimes messes up, so you have to like refix the buttons, or you just have to pick up an Xbox controller and then play the game that way during certain cutscenes just to make sure you can get through the part because you can't back up the car with the setup that I had on my controls, which makes it really hard to get past one of the boss guys. Um, All-time favorite Resident Evil characters, I guess Leon, right?
Actually, I love me some Wesker. Like Albert Wesker is such a badass character. I'm one of those dudes that like roots for the bad guys, so I love Wesker.
Wow, I'm shocked to hear that. What'd you feel about the movies then?
I think I'm like one of the only like Resident Evil fans I know that actually didn't hate the movies, but kind of went into them with an open mind in the sense of like, okay, these probably aren't going to be, as good as the games are, but I'll enjoy them for what they are. And I was able to kind of get past it that way. But yeah, I don't hate them. They're not great, but I don't hate them.
You know what I thought was
The first one's really good.
Yeah, I think that out of that franchise, I think that those were like that first one was the closest to relatability, you know, as far as what people wanted from the game. I know they tried to incorporate characters throughout the series, but I don't know. It just felt like I don't know. It just felt like it was lackluster for me. You know what I do think though is like a lot of people hate on Welcome to Raccoon City, but I thought that that was a pretty good movie.
It's it's good for like the first like I don't know, maybe 20 minutes or so. Like there's a lot of like appealing to like the nostalgia for fans in the first like 20 minutes.
Mhm.
And then it just like jumps the shark after that.
Yeah, I don't know what how I feel about them merging the first two games together into one movie, which I guess kind of makes sense because in a way those first two games did kind of take place around the same time.
Mhm.
But I don't I don't think that they should have like I don't know. Each game deserved its own moment, I guess, is what I'm but and then you could bring it together like a big team up movie. But it's very rare that Leon and Chris cross paths in the games. Um, so I guess in a way it's like okay, well we can't really make these actors all come together with a big Avengers style team up movie if they never if we're trying to stick to the pleasing the audience.
I think kind of what happened was when they were in the and this is just me like theory crafting or whatever.
Hmm.
They were probably working on like because we already knew a reboot was in the works, so they were probably working on like a one based on the first game, and then there was like this huge resurgence of popularity of the Resident Evil games and the Resident Evil franchise again after the remake came out. So I think what happened is they were probably like, we need to capitalize on the popularity of this RE2 remake. So let's just shoehorn RE2 into this as well.
Yeah, I feel like they did that too. They were like, "Well, we're not going to give you a second movie," so they're like, "All right, let's just all go all out for the first one." And I know that the guy who wrote that movie was like, "This is like a love letter to my love for the games," and I feel like he missed the point. But I mean, they did way better than that weird Netflix show. Did you watch that?
Oh my god, that Netflix show is so horrible. I've never hated anything more in my life than I hate that goddamn Netflix show.
I was like, "Is this even Resident Evil? Like this? Who are any of these characters? I felt like I was watching a CW show more than I was watching a Resident Evil show."
I remember when it first came out, like I was live tweeting as I was watching it, and I was just like horrified with how terrible it was. That weird scene where, spoiler alert to anybody who hasn't seen it,
You're
well,
not
although
missing
my advice
anything.
is don't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't see it. But the weird scene with all the like Wesker clones in the same room, and then fucking Wesley Snipes Wesker shows up. It's just like the weirdest thing. And then what was that one like chick that worked for Umbrella? That scene where she's like a robot and she's like dancing or whatever. Like, what the
Yeah.
fuck was that?
The girl could control her or something, I think was like part of her weaponry or something. And then she was making her
Yeah, it
do
was really fucking stupid.
Yeah, it was just I don't know. I mean, it's amazing to me how Hollywood continues seems to miss the point of these video game movies. And I'm trying to think of one that really they seem to be doing okay with Henry Cavill in that one The Witcher. I think that was a okay attempt. But as far as video games, I mean, aside from like Sonic and Mario, which you can't really go wrong because those are such beloved characters as long as they're in it with a couple of their
Oh,
friends.
you can go very wrong. Do you remember Mario from the 90s? I mean, to be fair, that's kind of like a cult classic. Like some people love it and some people really hate it. I'm in the love camp, but if you like it's still so bad. Even
Yeah,
for the people who love it, it's still so bad when you think about the fact that like, yeah, this is a video game movie.
yeah.
But yeah.
The live action I mean, they didn't have like the technology to make like I guess the CGI that they have today. But yeah, it was. That was definitely an interesting. King Koopa was like Dennis Hoffman. That was just a very odd, very odd experience for sure. And then the Koopa Troopers were just
Yeah.
like these huge bodies with these small heads, which is the opposite of what a Koopa Trooper actually is. It's a giant head with a tiny body.
Yeah. I remember when like the first Resident Evil movie was like coming out, I actually had like high hopes of it because Paul W.S. Anderson was working on it and he actually did a really good job on the first Mortal Kombat movie.
Hmm.
So I'm like, okay, he did good with that movie. So surely he won't fuck up this like Resident Evil thing, and it's like, no, he kind of did. I mean, granted, like I said, the first Resident Evil movie is actually pretty good, but if you're going into it expecting it to be like the games, you'll be brutally disappointed.
Are you talking about the one? Are you talking about the '90s Mortal Kombat movie, or are you talking about the Mortal Kombat movie that recently came out?
The original '90s one, yeah.
Yeah, that was great. I'll admit that was great. And back then, they clearly had much better vision for the characters than they do. Like they made every character awesome. Like Johnny Cage has like he was so much fun in that movie. And then they were like, you know what? He's probably one of the fan favorites. Let's kill him off in the beginning of the second one. And you're like, what the like? Why would you do that?
Yeah, everything like they did right with the first one, they fucked up with the second one.
Yeah, yeah, honey. The door's open. All right. So, where at what point in your career did you decide? All right. I know you got your career started with gaming and doing like retrospectives. Obviously, the AVGN was. Would you say he's like your biggest influence in getting started doing content?
Yeah, definitely. Like he was the main inspiration that originally got me started. In terms of like wanting to make content. I don't know if I call this a career per se. I've never been successful enough to like make it like my full-time gig,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I mean he was definitely like the original like inspiration for me getting into making content.
Yeah, I can understand it. It does take a lot of passion to keep going at this, to make it full time. And I think they say like 1 out of 10 people can actually make it into a full time job, which is not great. Not great ratio.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, honey. Um, I will. Thank you. When did you go from like doing only video game stuff to branching out into commentary? Like, what made you want to do that transition? Was there like a specific event that happened, or were you just like, you know what, I enjoy talking about things. I think I want to kind of start talking about culture and stuff.
I think it kind of like there was a combination of things. Around 2016, like that's when the sort of drama commentary community like really blew up.
Mm-hmm.
And like I feel like a lot of especially people who are currently involved in commentary, that's when they really got into it because just like that was like a really popular type of content at the time. So I was watching, commentary content. I just wasn't creating that kind of content on my own. And right around that time, I kind of was getting bored of like the gaming stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, I want to do something different, but I'm not really sure what. So in the process of trying to figure out how I wanted to like change things moving forward, um, this Billy Mitchell story came up where Billy Mitchell, I don't know if you're familiar with him. Do you know who Billy Mitchell is?
The Pac-Man guy.
Yeah, the Pac-Man guy.
That is a wild
So
story.
yeah, so his drama with him like supposedly cheating on like his games or whatever kind of popped up, and because I was still kind of like a gaming guy, I started talking about that,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when I kind of realized, well, this is kind of like commentary, even though like it's around a gaming topic, it's kind of commentary. So I guess I can do this commentary stuff, and that's when I decided, you know what, fuck it, why not? I'm already watching this kind of content, and I already enjoy watching it, so why not? Let's give it a try, and it just kind of worked.
Yeah. I would definitely say Billy Mitchell just lost his suit. Did he? I didn't know that. I haven't been following it, but I do think that's a crazy story. Like he was using essentially, if you guys don't know who Billy Mitchell is, he was like supposedly the self-proclaimed best Pac-Man guy in the entire world, or Donkey Kong, I think it was. Yeah, Donkey Kong. And
It was Donkey Kong and Pac-Man. Those were his like games.
I think that what happened was he was using like a uh, almost like a console type version of it, not the official arcade cabinet, which I think is what you needed to be able to contend for like world records and stuff. And they were showing how the cabinet can be like not manipulated for scores, but the scores can be scored a lot easier than they could if you were in the arcade version. So and then he had his world record beat by somebody, and then he immediately beat it the next day, and I'm sending the recording and stuff. But you can see differences. Like these people went so hardcore. You could see differences in like just frames, dropped frames and stuff. It's great, honey. Thank you. But it was insane story.
Yeah, essentially what it was is he was competing because they do track the high scores for like the console versions and stuff like that as well. But he was competing specifically in the original arcade tier,
Mm.
and they noticed some discrepancies in his gameplay where it looked like it was being played on an emulator. So they started to like look into it and see like was he playing on like official hardware or was he playing on an emulator? This is one thing that like a lot of people get wrong when they report on this story because I was all over this story at the time when
Mm-hmm.
it was like super hot. But when they finally came to their conclusion, because a lot of people will say he got exposed for playing on MAME, it's not exactly accurate. What their final findings after the investigation was is they couldn't conclude that it was MAME that he was playing on. The only thing they were able to determine for sure is that based on the way the screen loaded on his gameplay,
Mm-hmm.
is that it wasn't played on official hardware. So they were able to like invalidate his scores based on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Um,
really cool documentaries about the whole story that I've watched.
yeah,
Like really
it's
super
very
in depth.
interesting.
Yes, for sure. I mean, this is a guy who's looking for his moment of fame, and I almost he still swears to this day, right, that he did it right. But I guess his
Yeah,
argument was,
he still insists that he never played on MAME or whatever. I feel like he's kind of using weasel words though, because he's saying like I've never played on MAME, which based on what the findings are saying, yeah, it's possible that he didn't play on MAME, but it was determined that he didn't play on official hardware. So he won't word it like that. He'll just say I've never played on MAME, and it's like okay, cool, but that wasn't what the findings of the investigation was. The findings of the investigation was that you didn't play on official hardware. So, did you play on official hardware? And he never words it like that.
I
So,
gotcha.
I think he's being a little bit weaselly with his responses.
Yeah, omitting the truth, but not
Yeah, yeah,
not
kind of
straight out lying.
dancing around it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that gets you in the commentary. Now you've literally worked with pretty much everybody at this point, right? You're an OG, and you're like almost considered almost like legendary in the commentary community. Whether that's for
I
good
don't
or
know if
for
I'd
bad.
go that far, but
Well, you don't come in the commentary without your name being tossed around. You know what I mean? Whether that's good or bad, you can't deny the impact that you've had on the community. How does like that like feel? Are you ever like recognized out in public to the point where people like are like, "Yo, I know you. I've seen you on the internet."
it doesn't happen super often, but it's happened like a handful of times. Funny enough, it happened more often when I was doing the gaming stuff
Mm-hmm.
originally because I would attend like a lot of gaming conventions and stuff, and so people who watch my videos would like notice me at the conventions. But as far as like for commentary stuff, it's happened a couple times, but not super frequently.
Um, do you what's it like? Like that you have like so many people out there who constantly bring your name. Is that like affect you at all, or are you just like tunnel vision, business as usual?
I'd be lying if I didn't admit that like there was a time when it definitely like kind of fucked with me or whatever. That definitely was the case, especially since there's a lot of like negativity associated with it now. As far as like me now, no, I just don't give a shit. I just kind of I'm over here on my side of the internet doing my own thing, and if people want to like talk about me or obsess about me or whatever the case may be, I just don't. I don't care, and I don't pay much attention to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the way we actually met was through Kaylee. I see you down there. We were watching. We happened to be watching the August stream, and they kept mentioning your name, and she was like, "You know what? I can message him on X." Which, by the way, I was like new at the time. I didn't even realize that was something that people did was like message on X, and I was curious if you were aware that Augie and Nick had been like constantly bringing up your name because I guess the whole time like something was happening with Boblax at the time. And were you aware that that was going on at the time, or did you find out when you popped in to see what we were talking about? I've always been curious about that.
So, because of the fact that like I was trying to like focus on doing like my own thing, I didn't really pay much attention, over the course of like the past year or so to what the commentary community was up to. So I wasn't really aware. Every once in a while, what would happen is like sometimes people would tell me about things,
Mm-hmm.
like friends or whatever. They'd like, hey, they said this or they said that. But outside of that, I didn't really keep in touch with what was going on. But in regards to the Boblack stuff, that's what happened. Like a friend told me, "Hey, did you see the stuff that's going on with Boblax?" And I was like, "No, what's going on?" So they sent me like a few clips and a few videos and stuff, and that's kind of how I found out about it and kind of got involved. Um, as far as like how I was involved with the Boblax stuff.
I thought it was really cool at the very end because there kept being this overarching narrative for that stream, and there was I think there was like maybe 4 or 5,000 people in there at one point. Like everybody was watching this debate between Bo and Nick, and your name kept coming up over and over again, and all of a sudden, I don't know, it was almost like you could see in real time the tides of like the opinion of you starting to change from people being like negative towards you to being like, you know what, like we could really, it's almost like everybody wanted you to show up at some point. And then at the very end of the stream, here you call in, and they don't even know if it's really you. They think that you're fake. They think that you're, it's somebody pretending to be you. And then, it turns out to be, was it weird kind of reconnecting with you guys? And and the ending when you said goodbye to them, it was almost like, because I know that I did a little research on you before I got started. Before this interview, so I could, be up to date with like your history on the internet. And, I noticed that in the beginning of your career, you're a little more, you weren't as I guess, steadfast to not be like, you were okay with being provocative and, saying things that other people might not be willing to say. Was that kind
As
of
far as like what?
like, being a little edgy, I guess with some of your wording, some of, like obviously you're not saying anything like racist, but you would say things like faggot, retard, shit, things along those lines.
Oh no, definitely not. Actually, I was not like one. I was probably one that stood out a little bit in the commentary community, if anything, because like slurs were like super common in that space, and I wasn't one that would use slurs often. I think the only slur I really used, as far as my content was concerned, was the R slur,
Well,
which
the
I
reason I
personally
mentioned,
don't even think is that big of a deal.
yeah, the reason I mentioned the F one is because that's how you said goodbye to Augie and Nick, which I thought was a brilliant way to say goodbye. Is that I don't know. It was kind of like a I don't know. You took like a huge W on that night. Did it feel like you kind of got like some kind of vindication throughout the, Boblax? Because I'm aware that he was doing these streams called Tipster Bully streams on you, that he would like basically rewatch your content and just make fun of you the whole time, which I got to say that's pretty depressing to, focus your whole intention on just harassing one other person on the internet.
Yeah, he kind of became like a he almost became like a DSP detractor channel, but instead of DSP, it was me. Which is like I understand that there's like bad decisions or bad opinions I've given in the past, and if you want to roast me for those, like that's cool. But it got to this weird point where like he would just fire up a live stream and like react to my live stream of me like just playing video games and doing like nothing and trying to make content out of it where like there was nothing there. Like he was trying to like squeeze like orange juice out of a turnip. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and it just seemed like really unhinged and obsessed. I don't know.
Well,
But
no, go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say in regards to like your question though, like um when I called into there, it was like this weird, surreal feeling because it was like it was the first time in a long time I had called into an Augie stream because you're kind of right in the sense that like I was a big part of the commentary scene at one point, and like Augie used to do these like after hour streams, and I was a regular that would call in all the time. It was like rare to see an after hours that I wasn't calling into. And then it got like to a point where like I never really called in at all, and then obviously eventually I had like my kind of falling out with like the commentary scene, which obviously led to me being on even less frequently. So it was weird after so long of not being a part of that scene and calling into those streams to suddenly be on one of those streams again. It was a very weird feeling. As far as you asked about being vindicated, in a way, yeah, because I got criticized for a lot of things by the
Mm-hmm.
commentary community, some valid, some not. But like it seemed like the thing that got me the most shit was my falling out with Boblax. And people like it went from people just wanted to shit on me after I had a falling out with Boblax to like they genuinely hated me because they saw my falling out with Boblax as kind of like me backstabbing Boblax. Um, but I think that after with everything that happened with the Boblax situation and me finally having like a good opportunity to kind of share my side of what actually happened there,
Mm-hmm.
I think people saw that Boblax wasn't exactly honest about what contributed to our falling out, and I think they kind of had like second thoughts about maybe us giving Tipster so much shit about what happened with him and Boblax, maybe we were giving the wrong person shit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I've only been in commentary for a little over a year now, and I do notice that a lot of times if a rivalry starts up between two creators, a lot of times people will be kind of pushed to choose one side. Do you feel like
Mhm.
a little of that happened when you and Boblax had your issues?
Um, I wouldn't say that. I think it was just Boblex was just genuinely dishonest about what happened because as I'm sure you've heard at this point, because I've kind of discussed it on various different avenues at this point.
Mm-hmm.
When me and Boblex had our falling out, a lot of people were mad at me because they saw what I did as like backstabbing Boblex. So then I instantly, as somebody who did consider Boblex a friend at the time, I reached out to him and said, "Look, like when we had this conversation, because it was a conversation with me, Keffles, and Boblax,
Mm-hmm.
where my goal was to bring them on to try and help them resolve like an issue they were having.
Yeah.
Um, so my goal in there wasn't like to backstab or anything. My goal was, hey, maybe we can get these two together, get them to settle their differences, and then it'll be fine." And I thought we did that. And based on private conversations I had with Boblax afterwards, he thought the same. Like everything seemed fine. And then even when everybody was shitting on me, because like the whole like commentary community was coming down on me about how I did Boblax dirty and I backstabbed him and I'm a shit friend or whatever. So then I instantly reached out to him and I was like, hey man, everybody seems like pretty with me. Like they think that I did you wrong. And like if you feel that way, I'm like really sorry. And he assured me, no, everything's fine. Like I thought that convo went really good, and I think everything's cool. So I'm like, all right, cool. So my assumption was, oh, maybe he didn't know I was getting shit on for this. So surely he'll turn around and like tell everybody, hey, I see you guys are mad at Tipster for this, but like, everything's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with what happened or whatever. And he didn't do that. He kind of like just kind of hung me out to dry in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, that's kind of fucked. And admittedly, it kind of pissed me off, but it didn't piss me off enough to the point where I was gonna make a big deal about it. I just kind of let it go, and I was like, okay, whatever. It is what it is. But then like shortly after that, like one of the boundaries that I had set with him after that conversation with him and Keffles was don't try to drag me into drama between you and another friend of mine again, because it's a really uncomfortable position to put me in. Don't do that to me again. And
And who did who did you have
the
that
very next
convo
day he
with?
did it again. This was with the Boblax.
Okay. So he was trying to.
Yeah.
He feel like he was trying to put you in an awkward position with Keffels.
Well, yeah, he kind of like, because I was friends with Keffles at the time and I was friends with him. They got into a fight and he kept like, why are you not defending me over this? And I'm like, dude, like, this is between you and Keffles. I don't need to be involved.
Mm-hmm.
And he dragged me into it. So then I kind of like, you know, tried my best to, I was served lemons in that situation. So, okay, let's try to make some fucking lemonade. So my thing was like, okay, he wants to drag me into this. I don't want to be in it, but I'm in it now. Fuck it. I'll bring them both on my stream and try to help them resolve it. And like I said, everything seemed like it went well. And he assured me that everything went well. But then he let me continue to get shit on. So, like, whatever. That pissed me off, but it wasn't enough to break the deal. What was the deal breaker for me in conjunction with that was, okay, I asked you nicely, don't do this to me again. And the very next day they got into a fight again and he did it again. So I'm like, okay, you hung me out to dry and you can't respect this boundary that I've given you.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's it. I'm just done. I'm fed up at this point. And then also there was like him being like super dishonest with me about, hey, just letting you know, sometimes in private conversations I talk shit about you, but it's just a joke. and I just want you to know it's just a joke. And like in hindsight, I looked at that and I was like, okay, so he was just trying to get ahead of anybody like reaching out to me and telling me, oh, you're talking shit, you know. So it was a combination of things. It wasn't just like one thing where I'm like, fuck Boblax. It was a combination of things, and I think people needed to see the mixed messages he was sending me and the fact that he wasn't being dishonest or like totally honest and upfront about everything to understand where I was coming from and kind of like look at that situation with fresh eyes and say, yeah, turns out Tipster wasn't exactly being the piece of shit we thought he was.
And
But
and it turns out that that seemed to be what got Boblax in trouble too. Was that he would tell people one thing, like talking to them, and then in his inbox he would have completely different conversations with people.
exactly, exactly. My understanding, because I didn't follow all this too much, so I'm not. Because again, I didn't really follow the commentary scene all that much. But my understanding was there was this commentary creator he was friendly with that like some of the other people, like I think Nick, weren't too fond of, and he would like be friendly with both of them behind the scenes, but then he would go to those two creators and talk shit about the other one to them or something like that. I don't really know.
Yeah, I think that's the gist of it. Yeah.
Yeah, what was the other creator's name? I don't even fucking know.
I know that it was Nick. Oh my God, why can I not remember the other guy's name? It wasn't Aiden. I know that Aiden was just trying to get in the debate, but I know that these people were on Chud, and but I can't remember because I know that Nick had to come on to defend Boblax from whoever it was. It was after this thing happened so like so many months ago that it's like, oh my God, I can't remember who these
Yeah,
people are. But
that was another thing that kind of like through the situation, I realized in some ways that I kind of like misjudged Nick because like there's this common like theme in the commentary community where like if you're upset about something or somebody says something that bothers you or whatever, you can't really talk about it because they're not going to care. They're just going to tell you, well, tough it up, Buttercup, and like who gives a shit sort of thing. So
yeah,
there were times when like, maybe something was said that wasn't quite accurate about me, or maybe something that was said in a way that I really wasn't happy about, but I felt like I couldn't say anything about it because that's the perception of the commentary community. Meanwhile, I'm looking at this conversation before the falling out that Nick is having with Boblax, and Nick showed Boblax so much fucking grace. Like he has this reputation publicly of being such a hard ass that wouldn't give a fuck. But like he showed so much grace to Boblax, and I'm like, I clearly misjudged this guy. And so that's kind of like why I kind of came to this place where I'm like, I don't think me and Nick will ever be friends again per se. I think there were just too many things on both sides that were said that, you know, he can't get past or I can't get past, etc. But having said that, I do think initially I misjudged him, and that's why I was willing to kind of like have a conversation with him and kind of make peace in a sense. Like we're not buddies, and we won't be buddies anytime soon, I don't think. But I could at least make peace with him and put the bullshit behind us, if that makes sense.
yeah, I did notice that Nick seemed to be like, I don't know, almost like a big brother type figure of Boblax when he was on Chud's stream, and I was like you said, Nick has this reputation of kind of being like a no sense guy and a no nonsense guy, and it was like weird to see Nick have that different approach to someone who, normally Nick would be like, okay, here's, let's do it for the content. But for that particular stream, he was like trying to protect Boblax's mental health, which, not saying Nick doesn't have a heart, but it was definitely not the internet persona of Nick that we were used to seeing for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't agree with every opinion that Nick has, and like I said, I think there were things that were said on both sides that you know neither of us will be able to like get past to the point of like, hey, we're like best buds again.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I do believe that in a lot of ways I did misjudge him. Like I think there are probably times where I was upset about something where I could have talked to him about it, even though I didn't talk to him about it. I could have. So yeah, I misjudged him to some extent.
Gotcha. I noticed something. I know you said there was an argument between him and Keffles, and I noticed you said that at the time you were friends with Keffles. Are you no longer friends with Keffles?
Yeah, we're still friends.
Oh,
I know
okay.
there was a big thing going around about she blocked me on Blue Sky or whatever. So everybody kind of took that as like, oh, they're not friends anymore. No, we're fine. We're still cool. She just kind of she's not on the internet anymore. She's just doing her own thing. And so we don't talk as much as we used to because she's not really online anymore, but yeah, we're still friends. We're still cool.
Yeah, I know. And if not for anything else, you guys both know what it's like to have the internet all make documentaries on you guys. I definitely think.
So much more than that. Because that's like one thing I actually just had a conversation with somebody recently. Because like I'll sometimes see people talk about like a lot of the shit I had to deal with, and they're like, "Why does Tipster make such a big deal about this?" It's just like people like joking and memeing on him, and it's like, no, there's maybe as far as the content creators are concerned, that's all it is. But there's unfortunately like orbiters in the audience that take shit way too fucking far.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no benefit to publicly discussing some of the shit I've had to deal with, but there's a lot of really fucked up shit that happened behind the scenes. And yeah, it just I don't think people realize how fucked up it can get. They think it's just the internet, and if something bothers you on the internet, you just log off. But some people just take shit too far, and they do things that can affect your life in the real world. So
Not.
it's so much more than just, oh, some people made some documentaries about me and said some mean things, or some people made fun of me or whatever. Like, it's whatever. I don't give a shit about that. It's the people that decide to take it way too fucking far and do things that are totally unacceptable.
Yeah, especially if the content creator they're listening to talk about you, like the person who is watching looks at what they say as gospel. If they get any information wrong, you could, that person could be like, oh, well, then it's open season now on this guy. And I totally understand that. And I know that Keffles had that thing with Kiwi Farms. That probably was an unpleasant experience to deal with, if I had to say so myself.
Yeah,
Um,
for
but
sure.
yeah, so all right. So I mean, I appreciate you clearing that all up, because I mean that was a pretty big drama that happened probably before all this Mr. B stuff. It was like everybody was talking about Boblax, and I remember that whole situation went down. By the way, I appreciate you deciding to swing by the stream and say hello. But I
Yeah,
thought
shout
that.
out to Kaylee for that, because I'll be honest, I had never even heard of you before, and then the Kaylee person reached out to me, and I was like, yeah, I'll stop in the chat and see what's up, and so that's kind of how you and I got in contact.
Yeah. Kaylee's really cool. Yeah, I'm new. I'm newer. I've been doing content since as long as probably you have, except I started off as a musician, then went to doing skating videos, and then from skating videos, I just ended up working a job, and then now I'm kind of like, getting back into creating content. So I've been taking it seriously for the first time in my life for the past year. So commentary's always been something I've enjoyed. I think the human psyche is fascinating to me, and drama just kind of works with that, because you're getting to see people like in their most primal form, and that's like survival mode. Because it's, as you've experienced, it's easy to be dismissed from almost like a pack, and a lot of people will do a lot of things to try to remain in that pack. And you get to see sides of people, like, okay, this person's like, it just happened to a friend of mine, actually had just went through kind of a rough spot. I'm not going to say his name, but you know he took it really hard. And it's interesting to see how people can either let that defeat them, or let bounce back from it. And by all intents and purposes, it seems like you've bounced back from the many lashings that have been sent your way.
It depends on how you look at it. As far as like, are people not giving me as hard of a time as they used to? No, not so much. But as far as the career side of things, not so much. I'm kind of okay with that though. Honestly, I'm just kind of back to doing content that I actually enjoy making, because prior to leaving commentary for the past year and a half, 2 years before that, I just wasn't really into it anymore. I just kind of did it because it made me money. But
Yeah.
outside of that, I didn't really care about that kind of content anymore. You kind of get to a point where you see sort of the bad side of that scene, and like some of the the fact that, you know, the audience does take things too far sometimes, and whether it's your intention or not, people do get harassed as a result of that kind of content. And I'm not necessarily saying I think that, you know, the creators are entirely responsible for that. I do think that it would be beneficial if the creators at least acknowledge that, like, yeah, sometimes people in your audience do take shit too far. If you criticize someone, at least acknowledge that that is a thing that happens. But it just became a point where it's like some of the shit that happens in this space, I don't want to be associated with it anymore. And so I kind of like that last year or two that I was in commentary, I was like slowly kind of like moving away from that and venturing into other things.
So,
But
so I guess the Tipster redemption back into commentary is not anywhere in the near future.
no, I've made that super clear because I've seen so many people, like, the meme is, you know, tipsters coming back in the house. And I was just like, I don't want that. I have no interest in that. I kind of do like, I dabble a bit into the politics stuff, and I do like my little gaming streams for fun, and that's it. I don't really have any interest in um, getting back into commentary. I'm fine being civil with those people. Like I said, I don't think I'll ever be friends again with those people, but I'll be civil. But as far as like, do I want to get into doing drama commentary content again? No, I have zero interest in that.
So I guess like if Nick were to reach out and be like, "Hey, you know, man, like I feel real bad about how things went down." Like this is just not saying this is gonna happen. But like Nick comes up to you, he's like, "Hey, man, you know, I really feel bad about how things went down between us. You know, I'd love to just bury the hatchet and be friends again." You'd probably say, I don't think that that's something that I can come back from, or is that like an idea that you would entertain?
I mean, I think if anybody approaches you with a level of sincerity that they're like, yeah, maybe things went a little bit too far and like I apologize, like I wouldn't go as far as to say like that's a physical impossibility. Like it's definitely like possible. I just think where we stand right now, I don't even think, if I'm being honest, like I don't even think he's interested in that. I don't think either of us is interested in that. But I'm not gonna say it's completely off the table. You know, people grow with time, people change with time, their opinions on things change, and so anything's possible. But I think based on public statements I've seen him say on it, I
Hmm.
think he pretty much has the same position that I have right now. That like, you know, we're not really interested in being like friends again or anything like that, but we can be civil with each other, and we can just kind of like, you know, um, I guess the term that was used, have a truce or whatever. I'm not really sure, but
Yeah, like a
I,
ceasefire.
yeah, I guess the simplest way to put it is I don't hate Nick. I'm upset about some of the things that were said, obviously, but
Hmm.
I don't hate Nick. It takes a lot for me to hate someone, and I don't know. Like maybe was there a time there when I hated him? Probably when it was like when it was really like getting like when things were really fucked up and whatnot. But I don't know. I've never been the type of person to hold a grudge. You know, I get it out of my system and then I just fucking move on.
I got you.
So
Um, if you could, if you were restarting your journey on YouTube today, would you change anything, or do you feel like some of the lessons you've learned along the way have been positive in your growth as a person?
um, I know for sure that like based on how I feel about it now, and based on some regrets that I have about it, I wouldn't get involved in commentary again. If I can go back and do it again, I wouldn't get involved in drama commentary again. And I also probably would have been more open with a lot of my political views sooner, because I've always kind of felt the way I do about some of my political positions.
Mm-hmm.
It's just when you're in commentary, not even just in commentary, like in content creation in general, a lot of times people will tell you don't talk about politics because you'll alienate a large portion of your audience. And so that's a lot of the reason why I never really talked about it before. Um, but it has become something that I'm like genuinely interested in, and it has been something I've been interested in for a while. So um, those are probably the two things I would change. Is I would be a little bit more interested in expressing my political views sooner, and then also I wouldn't get involved in the drama commentary scene. because I do have a lot of regret about getting involved in that space. While my intentions were never to harass anybody, I do acknowledge that my content probably contributed to some people being harassed by my audience, and I have a lot of regrets about that.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope because it is one of them niches that are basically designed to point out people's flaws, to make fun of people. It's kind of just it comes with the territory because a lot of times we're calling out bad behavior, and a lot of times, especially I've noticed when sometimes there's not a whole lot of stories. Sometimes people will start looking inward and being like, hey, you know what, I don't have anything to talk about today, but you know what, I remember that guy with the couple thousand
Hmm.
subscribers. I remember what he did. I'm gonna make a video about him. You know what I mean? Like, it is very content brained a lot of time, and sometimes it's hard to separate yourself from the human part of you that would normally not treat someone like that way if you met them in a store, as opposed to maybe the safety of being behind a computer might allow you to kind of. Plus, I also feel like we're playing these characters, right? I don't know about you, but like the person I'm playing on this stream right now is kind of like my who I really am, but like turned up to like 12. Like I don't talk like this to people
Hmm.
in real life. I'm kind of much more laid back, much more calmer, a little more strategic in my delivery of how I talk, and much more like monotone. But the minute you get online, all of a sudden, like now you got to put on a voice, and now you got to, because you're entertaining people at the end of the day, and sometimes
Hmm.
that involves like making making fun of people, which is something that I didn't really feel comfortable with. But as you continue to do it, you're kind of like, well, okay, well, I just made a video kind of defending this person, but now that video nobody's watching. It's like, okay, but that video where I kind of criticized that other person, now that video is doing really well, and then it's almost like
Hmm.
behavioral reinforcement of, okay, well, if I don't start fucking like getting on some people's asses, like I'm not gonna be able to do this much longer.
Yeah. It also becomes a thing of like you start to get to a point where you start justifying your behavior. Like it's like a shitty thing to do, but you're like, yeah, but this person's really bad and they like deserve it. And it's like, yeah, maybe they did something really bad, but I would go as far as to say at least 8 times out of 10, the level of like shit that someone gets for something, it's like way over exaggerated compared to like what they actually did. Like obviously there are people who do really horrible things like I don't know, let's use EDP for example, right? Like that
Yeah.
guy was literally like a child predator. So people shit on him like I don't give a fuck. But you'll have someone who's like I don't know, trying to think of like an example. Maybe they just gave a really dumb take about something,
Yeah.
right? And they will get treated with the same level of vitriol as like the guy who's like the child predator. And it's like, do you think that's a bit much? Like if you want to roast this guy because he gave a bad take, fair enough, but does it really have to be like this intense, the level of like harassment they're facing just because they said something dumb? I don't know. It just seems a bit extreme sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that, again, it goes back to that reinforcement of, almost like Pavlov's dog, where he rings the bell, he gets the water, and then, eventually you ring the bell, the dog starts salivating because he wants that water. It kind of works the same way in the commentary community. You you shit on someone, you get rewarded for it with a lot of views. All of a sudden, now you're looking to shit on someone that same way, and even though not every time does the punishment match the crime for every situation, like,
Yeah.
so I think that that's definitely an issue that, and that's not just in commentary. Let's be honest, that's all over the internet. The T community does it. The ACC community does it. The more you can find targets to eliminate, not only one are you eliminating competition, but two, you're eliminating, you're getting content out of it too. So it's it's a like I said, it's a slippery slope, and it can quickly change the type of person you are online compared to who you might actually be like in real life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like that scene really like, and the funny thing is, like, a lot of people will say, like, Tipster, you really weren't that bad, and like it's true. Like in comparison to some other commentary creators, like I probably didn't engage in like behavior as like toxic as they did. But even so, like it's enough to where I look back and I'm like, yeah, I don't like the person I became when I was a part of this scene. And to be clear, like that's not to say that everybody. who does like drama content is like that. I'm sure there's plenty of people who do drama content who are great people. But
Mhm.
yeah, I look back at the person I became when I was a part of that scene, and I don't like that person, so I don't want to be that person anymore.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. There are definitely certain creators who I tend to gravitate more towards because I feel like one, their takes are always fair. You could still see that humanity in them, and uh, it's as opposed to maybe somebody who's specifically doing things just to be an edge lord, which I think there's. Let's be honest. There's 100,000 edge lords on the internet right now. Everybody trying to make their name by doing outrageous takes or because in a weird way, and I bring this up with a lot of people who I interview. The internet's the first time in history where hard work can get you fame. It's not like you're waiting on a casting director to give you that opportunity for fame. You can achieve this through hard work and repetition and improving your craft. Which has never existed, and a lot of times, really, what people are competing for is attention. And I would say that attention is probably the most valuable currency that we have on the internet today. It really is, because because attention equals dollar signs now, which I can't remember in my lifetime, and I've been around since Nintendo NES and the clickety click televisions where you had like 8 channels, and when you clicked it, it made like a loud noise. I'm sure you might have had one of those in your home with the antennas, and then you had like 8 channels, and
Oh yeah.
whenever you turn, like if you lost the remote, like it was like okay, like we're screwed now. I gotta go use that turn dial or the phone where you go, you four, 5. So I can say that I've been around entertainment for a long time. I've never seen more of a gold rush that is the internet like I have since maybe the gold rush in 49 where everybody would run out to California to try to make their riches. But now it's internet clout. That's the gold
Yeah.
rush, And you see it
Yeah.
you see these kids being raised on iPads instead of wanting to be the next Brad Pitt or the next Denzel Washington. They all want to be the next Kai Cenat or the next Mr. Beast.
hmm Yeah. One thing I'll say though is like, as somebody who's kind of like experienced it, um, that gold rush can end just as quickly as it arrives. So if you happen to be one of those people that like is looking at content creation as like a career or something like that, save your money if you do happen to find success because it could leave you as quickly as it came.
Yeah, I know Turkey Tom
Uh,
says this all the time on his stream that he seems to be doing a good job of like staying relevant as where there's so many creators who come have their few moments of fame and then they're gone. And then I think in that moment of fame they feel like it's going to be like this forever. And unless they evolve with the trends or continuously do something to keep their audience coming back, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with who Johnny Somali is, but that guy pretty much kept escalating his streams, his IRL streams, to just create chaos. And everybody who would tune in would want him to escalate that chaos more and more and more to the point now where he's being arrested. I think he's being held in South Korea right now, looking at maybe possibly 20 years.
Jesus.
So, that's the. I mean, I think a lot of this came from Jack Dougherty too. His I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but crashed his car, but it was a McLaren, a super fancy, nice car, and he got it from basically harassing people in public, and he made millions for it. As where
Yeah.
Fuzi did something similar with his pranks, those were staged and those were like set up. So Fuzi technically wasn't really hurting anybody. But Jack Dougherty doesn't know that growing up watching Fuzi. So instead, he just thinks Fuzi's out there pranking people in real life. So he's doing it to unsuspecting people that aren't going to have to sign a release and, getting his big security guard to step in and maybe threaten to beat them up if they try to defend themselves in any type of way.
Yeah.
That's the direction we're heading, unfortunately, and it's kind of scary because we're getting older, and eventually one day we'll be people who are too old to really defend ourselves against whatever the current trend is. Which I don't know if you remember the knockout game. That shit's scary. That's a trend that started on TikTok. You know what I mean?
It seems like so many of the worst trends, like that's where they start is on like fucking TikTok. Like I remember like the early days of YouTube when people would do like these weird trends, like the cinnamon challenge
Oh
and
my
like stuff like
god.
that. Like
Yes.
a lot of that shit was mostly like harmless, right? It's silly, but it doesn't really hurt anything. But like a lot of these like TikTok challenges that they do are just the most fucked up things in existence.
Yeah. Yeah, and the
Like
whole
TikTok is like literally like the worst of society in the sense of like people will do anything for clout.
and it's weird too because TikTok's like some poor, lady in her trailer in Tennessee can pick up her phone and all of a sudden next week she's a TikTok star because she's missing a couple of her teeth and she talks really funny and um I don't really see like I feel like YouTube's a little more I guess uh like you that same person might not find fame on YouTube that they could find on TikTok. I feel like TikTok gives everybody an opportunity, but it's also kind of like but that leaves way for some very interesting characters to make their way up in in the eyes of the public, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean like YouTube's always been like there's those people who can have that like viral fame because they have that like one little moment that like blows up for whatever reason. Um it's always had an element of that, but the kind of people who like get famous for something like that, they don't stay famous. They have their little blip on the radar of like, aha, this was like a really funny thing that happened. It's kind of like the Hawk Tuah girl,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah.
Like under any other normal circumstance, like okay, she'd be famous for that, and then like it's not like she becomes like this super famous success overnight. Now, granted, in her case, like she kind of like got in contact with I think it was Jake Paul that helped her start her podcast. I think. Um, so that's a little bit different. Like, but under normal circumstances, someone like her, they'd have their little viral moment, and then that's it. You know.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying she's an industry plant too. E-Shift, the cinnamon challenge was you had to put a spoonful of cinnamon and you'd have to eat it. Like you'd put it in your mouth, and the thing that it
You had to try to swallow it without coughing.
yeah, and then people would cough because the cinnamon instantly absorbs all of the saliva in your mouth and instantly turns your mouth into the Sahara Desert. So people would cough, and it would be entertaining to watch because you'd basically watch someone think they got it, and then next thing you know, they're falling on their knees coughing because they can't breathe, you know. And then of
Yeah,
course,
they did back in those days. Like on YouTube, there was like the cinnamon challenge, and then people did like. Do you remember the banana Sprite challenge?
I don't remember the banana Sprite one.
Banana Sprite was you eat a banana, like a whole banana, and then you chug as much Sprite as you can afterwards, and it like makes you puke.
Oh wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, and then there was also like people would try to like jug like a whole like gallon of milk, and it had the same effect. It would make you puke.
Mm-hmm. And the the Tide Pod challenge, we can't forget that classic.
Oh my god. See, I correct me if I'm wrong, but like I feel like the Tide Pod challenge, like that was like the first big like TikTok one, no? Or
That
was that before TikTok?
that was definitely that formed on TikTok. I think the first one might have been the ice bucket challenge, but that was actually for like a good cause. And then it was
Yeah.
like, then it seems like some idiot out there was like, you know what? I'm going to take this in the complete opposite direction. Instead of like doing something for ALS, I'm going to try to get these kids to do something that might kill them, you know?
Yeah.
But I mean,
Jeez.
there's always someone out there who wants to ruin it. Like I'm, you were on YouTube for Elsa Gate, like people who just take these at the peak of Marvel cinema. All of a sudden, people are making videos with Elsa and Spider-Man getting it on, and then having a baby, and then it's like,
That shit was like so weird.
yeah,
That was a really weird time on YouTube. Some of the shit that people made, like, I mean, there's still obviously some things that people make videos about that are like really weird or like get so close to the line. It's like, why is this fucking allowed? But like that era of YouTube, like 2016, 2017, there was so much weird shit that happened.
yeah. The one thing I think YouTube is so great for is that you can literally put in the search bar anything you want, and you will find someone who is talking about it. I think that's great, but also kind of I think in a way handicaps us from seeking knowledge because why would I go read about it if I could just click a 10-minute video where somebody's going to teach me everything I could possibly learn? Like I learned how to play every instrument I've ever learned how to play through YouTube, just self-taught on all of them. And that's something I would have had to pay for as a kid, and so it's good and it's bad.
Mm.
But you can get singing lessons for free. You can learn how to shoot movies for free. Like there's always someone
Yeah.
with a channel teaching you something.
I've literally done like serious, like I'm not talking about like simple like oil change or like changing your brake pads or whatever. I've done serious auto repairs on cars before based on learning through YouTube videos. And I'm not a car person.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty neat. I grew up with my dad who's like a gearhead, and yeah, he still uses YouTube. So because the cars evolved so much, and yeah, I saw that the newest version is the egg cracking on your children's head, where the parents will take a soft egg and then crack it on their kid's head, but the kids get scared. A lot of the kids start crying. It's like, why would you do that to your kid? You know. But
Yeah.
that's the internet. Like that one guy. I don't even know what the Costco guys. Oh my God, they're the popular thing right now. It's like this guy
I
who.
don't get it. Like I don't get the Costco guys thing. I have a friend who's really into the Costco guys shit, and I'm just like, I don't get it. They're just people who went to Costco and did stuff. I don't understand.
They rate products, I think, and they go like boom or like it's boom if it's a good product, and I forget what the other thing is if it's a bad product. But the dad, I
Yeah, I
guess,
get
was
this random DM from that friend occasionally. We bring the boom, and it's
yeah,
just stupid. Like I don't understand. I don't get it. You can't explain it to me.
it's the Rizzler, man. And then you got Baby Gronk, whose dad's out there just basically flat out exploiting his 11-year-old son with OnlyFans models who are like in their 20s, talking about going on dates with this kid, and it's like does anybody not see the issue here? Like there's a huge glaring issue here that if that happened to be men, like 20-year-old men and an 11-year-old girl, there'd be a much more of a cry for justice as it is for, since it's a guy like a 11-year-old kid who looks like he could pass for 15 flirting with a 20 something OnlyFans model. A lot of people tend to not flip out the way that they would have if it was the other way around. And I mean
Yeah, it's pretty fucked.
it is, man. And then like people are calling out the dad. Like the dad will bring the kid to do an interview with a popular podcast, and the dad just talks the whole time. The camera's on the dad the whole time. It's like nobody came here to talk to you, bro. Like you're just obviously exploiting your son for internet fame, and I think because his son's like one of the top football players in elementary school or something like that. But I mean that's you look at a place like Ryan's World. That kid made his family $1 billion. You know what I mean? And other parents are like, "Oh, why would I want to take my kid to Hollywood when I can just make videos with them in our house of them doing crazy stuff and make a fortune there?"
The Ryan's World shit's kind of fucked too because I have a nephew that was really into watching Ryan's World or Ryan's Toy Reviews, whatever the fuck, right?
Yeah.
And like you see this kid that his family's super successful because of his YouTube videos, right? And this kid gets all these toys, basically any toy any kid would ever want, he gets them. And then I look at like someone like my nephew who would watch that, and like they literally feel like they're not good enough if they don't have the same toys that this rich kid has.
Yep.
Like it's really fucked. It's one of those things that I guess like parents who like let iPads raise their kids don't really think about how this stuff like affects their kids. It's not good when you literally have a kid thinking that something must be wrong with him if his like family can't give him the same cool toys that like Ryan gets.
Yeah, dude. I worked at Target for a few years when I was getting my life back together, and like when I'd be in the back, there'd be literally an entire like back aisle dedicated to Ryan's World, those stupid egg things, and those things would sell out like that because the minute a kid walks down that aisle, they recognize that kid from the iPad and they want that egg because that Ryan opens his own eggs all the time and finds toys to play with. That kid's like what? He's like 14 now. He's like trying.
Something like that.
He's still trying to do content because I forget who did a video on him. I think maybe the Internet Anarchist might have did a video on him. But it was a good video, and like the kid's like growing up now, but he's still trying to make it as content, and it's like I just don't think that people are as I don't know. He could be doing well. I'm not sure. I don't want to speak out my ass, but definitely not
Speaking
making.
of speaking of kids entertainers on YouTube, do you know who Blippi is?
Yes. Oh my God, I know the story of him.
Do you know about the video Blippi did before Blippi?
Yes, I do, and it's
I'll never
disgusting.
forget because like my sister, she would let her son watch the Blippi videos, and she loved Blippi. She thought Blippi was great. I was like, "Have you seen Blippi's other video?" And she's like, "What do you mean?" And I showed her the video, and she was traumatized. She's like, "Oh my god."
Yeah, it's and I don't even know if I could describe it without getting this video flagged. That's how disgusting of a video it was. And you're right, Jay Sauce. He's the like Ryan was the breadwinner of his family. Like his job was to make money for his family, and it's like I can just see them sitting down begging Ryan to play with the toys so they can get the shot. You know, it's not like the kid got to just play willy nilly with these toys. It was you know, they were probably like, sit down and get the shot or you're not getting food tonight or something like that, you know, and obviously,
Mattel is paying us good money to play with these fucking Hot Wheels. Now play with the goddamn toy.
yeah.
Yeah, it's probably pretty fucked.
Don't make me get the belt.
Oh my god.
Oh my God. Yeah, we know about, I don't know if the kids still get the belt these days, but we used to when we were kids. But, yeah, dude, the whole situation's fucked, man. And, you know, I don't see a way out of it because it's all money at the end of the day. And that's always going to make people happy because nobody's going to stop it because the corporations are the ones making the money. So nobody's going to care, you know?
Yeah.
Ozempic being abused by celebrities. Yeah, Ozempic's definitely a big issue too. Everybody's using it as a weight loss drug, which I don't even think it was designed to do. I think it was supposed to be something else, and then everybody wanted on it because it made you skinny. But
It's supposed to help like diabetic people because like traditional treatments for like diabetes is like obviously it's very beneficial to lose weight while you're a diabetic, but at the same time like it's hard to do so because like your blood sugar is so unstable, right?
mm,
Like if you try to diet too much, you might make your blood sugar too low and it could like really fuck up your shit. So it's beneficial for somebody who has diabetes to lose weight, but it's hard because of their condition. So Ozempic was made to help them lose the weight while still having enough sugar in their diet to where they don't go into like a diabetic coma for having their blood sugar level too low.
gotcha. Hey,
Yeah.
Jazz Dog. I guess some of your chat's making their way over to say hi.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I had
thanks.
Jazz Dog in my chat ask who I was talking to, so I let him know.
Oh, cool, cool. Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm familiar with some of your controversy, but you know, you've never done anything personally to me, and I would, you know, I wouldn't hold it against anybody. So you know, I never see. I've been a victim myself of people having preconceived notions of the type of person I am through word of mouth, and I've always swore to myself I would never be that type of person. So while some people might be like, "Oh, you know, EG, you there wasn't even," I never. This was never supposed to be like a Barbara Walters interview. It was supposed to. I just wanted to pick people's brain about how they make content. You know, what kind of stuff they like to talk about. You know, that's the kind of free flowing vibe I like to have because you know, the last thing we need in the commentary community is another person out there specifically trying to create blood sports. You know what I mean? I feel like there's
Yeah, for
enough.
sure.
I feel like there's enough of that. So just a dare to do something different. Like for me, one of my biggest. The weirdest thing is too is like one of my biggest influences, Bo Burnham. I play piano during my commentary music because I think that it's one I've never seen anybody do it, so I thought it'd be kind of neat to incorporate that. Two, you know, I think that like you're familiar with Bo Burnham, I'm sure, right? You grew up with YouTube.
I've heard the name, but I've never actually seen any of their stuff.
He started off as a guy who just played piano. Like he was one of the first big YouTubers. He was back during Fred time, and he would just sit in his room and he'd write these songs that were silly, funny, comedic songs about you know his parents thinking he was gay because he was a theater kid and he wasn't, and like just silly stuff that he wrote for his brother, and it ended up like going super hella viral. He turned that into a comedy career, stand-up comedy career, uh, and then he ended up like probably being one of the most interesting acts because even though they would say he's a stand-up comic, if you watch one of his live shows, I would highly recommend Tipster checking out one of his live shows on Netflix called Make Happy. I think he balances the comedy with the music and the aspect of being a tortured artist and never really being able to, make himself happy the way that he finds a way to make other people happy. And I think as content creators, a lot of us can relate to that, right? Like I don't want to come in here and have to sacrifice my morals because I need content. You know what I mean? I'd rather have a video get a quarter of the views but have a great conversation with someone where I don't have to like hurt anybody to get it. You know what I mean? And I think that that's something that maybe it'll be my failure. Maybe I'll never reach the peaks of YouTube stardom, but at least I'll be able to sleep at night. You know what I mean? And I think Bo Burnham's a great example of that.
Jazz Dog subscribed really to the channel.
Seeked fame, even though there was a whole show called Zach Stone Wants to Be Famous on MTV that he was in, and I always found like the guy just loved creating art, and that's kind of how I feel, And I love commentary. I don't know if you've been like up to date with all the stuff going on with Mr. Beast. It's like it's like the biggest thing. I know you don't really watch commentary anymore, but are you familiar with all that stuff that's going on with him?
I've heard some of the stuff. Like I saw like the beginning of it, obviously the Chris Tyson stuff, and initially like from the space that I'm involved in now, sort of the like leftist politics scene. Initially, a lot of us like defended Chris Tyson because it just seemed like people were being like transphobic and looking for any reason to like harass them for coming out as trans. But obviously, more info came out, and it's just kind of like, okay, no, they've actually done some genuinely fucked up shit. There's no defending that.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to like, because I have seen some people who just can't back off of the high, feeling like they have the moral high ground, and then they'll just excuse certain things of people because of that aspect of it. But I think that that's a good thing that you're able to be able to be like, okay, there is a line, and obviously he crossed it or she crossed it. I get confused because at the time, Chris was Chris. So when you're referring in a past tense, it can get confusing because even though she's Ava now, he was Chris. So it's like where, I don't know. It's very complicated stuff, but I'm sure that you could probably maybe educate me a little bit on that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely understand like the confusion. There's like people, even like myself, somebody who's like pretty progressive. There's times when I met them before they transitioned, I kind of like mess up and like accidentally like misgender them and stuff too. I feel like a lot of people have this like perception that like trans people just get mad anytime they get misgendered, and it's like it's not the case. A lot of them, they understand that like it takes a while to get used to the change in a lot of situations. It's only when people are like deliberately doing it that they get really mad about it. But all that just to say that like I totally understand what you mean. It can be confusing when somebody first comes out.
Yeah, because I've had people like when I'm talking about it, I'm not like, I'm not necessarily trying to insult anybody, but you get really into telling the story, and you're like telling the story of Chris because when he was in these Discord servers, he was Chris, and then all of a sudden he's Ava, and then people were like, I can't believe you referred to her as he during that one part of the video. It made me feel so gross, and I'm like, I'm trying the best I can, like. I'd probably consider myself more center right than anything. But I definitely, I grew up, voting for Obama, so I in a lot of ways, I was a theater kid too, so I grew up around a lot of gay men. I don't care about that shit. Like, love who you love, live the way you want to live. It doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
And it's just it's such a massive culture shift that's taken place. It's a lot. It's pretty hard for a lot of people to adjust in tow. But I don't want to get into like a whole politics discussion. But essentially, I'm just explaining like how I arrived at where it can be confusing for. And I feel like there's a lot of people like me out there.
Gotcha. Yeah, I feel like one of the biggest like criticisms I have, as somebody who's very much on the left, that I criticize of other like leftists, is that oftentimes people assume malice where like ignorance can be more better attributed to it. Like in a situation like that, for example, where you're like, yeah, I'm not trying to be like hateful or like, be a jerk to anybody. I just, I don't really know, how that works. And so I feel like a lot of times that can be used as a golden opportunity to educate someone rather than get mad at them. But there's a lot of people who they instantly just assume like, oh, this is a transphobic piece of shit, and it's like, no, they just don't get it. Explain it to them,
Yeah.
and then they'll get it.
And then they don't even want to. I shouldn't have to explain it. They should just know. And then you're like, okay, well, we just lost that.
I feel like
person.
I'm very comfortable saying that those people aren't like realistic. Like a lot of times, people will look at like left-wing people on Twitter who act like that, and it's just like, yeah, those people aren't serious. Like they don't exist in reality. They just exist in a fucking bubble. Those are the same kind of people who are like, you should never, ever, ever associate with anybody who's right-wing ever. And it's like, no, that's not real life. In real life, you're going to have to, there's going to be people who disagree with you politically that are going to be a part of your family or like a part of your like social circles, or like you're going to have to work with those people. And like this notion of like, you should never, ever, ever associate with anybody like that. You could disagree with them, sure, but in reality, like you're going to have to associate with these people and you're going to have to engage with these people just because you disagree with them. Like that's not a realistic way to behave. That's just Twitter speak. It's not real life.
Yeah, and plus you're losing out on the opportunity to try to win them over. And I think that is a lot of the reason why this past election went the way it did, is because where if you have somebody on the left and then somebody who is on the right trying to explain what they believe in, they will literally explain until they're out of breath, trying to win over the person on the left to see things from their perspective. Is where I've noticed that a lot of times the person on the left will just be like, well, you know what? I don't even want to waste my breath on you. And it's like, well, there, you just lost another one. You know what I mean? I think that's where so much of the cultural shift has led us, is that those who put in more of the work and have the patience to explain usually end up winning out the day.
I think, even though we mentioned we weren't going to get into like politics or whatever, I will touch on something that you mentioned there briefly. I do understand where you're coming from in that regard, and I sort of like agree with it in some sense. But in regards to the election, I think the loss of the election for the left is a lot more simple than something like that. The reality is that the average normie voter, they don't think about stuff like trans issues, or they don't think about stuff like a lot of these progressive issues that like the left finds really important, and rightfully so. They just want to know, how are you going to lower my taxes, and how are you gonna contribute to more money in my wallet? And the reality is that Kamala Harris just didn't say enough to make people feel like that she was going to help them in that regard. She didn't appeal enough to the working class, and as a result, the working class voted against her. So I just think that the left in this case, needed to focus more on like telling people how they're going to improve their bottom line, because that's what the average everyday voter cares about.
No, I think you're absolutely right. It's like I think like 1% of the whole entire population identifies as like trans, and it's like, okay, well, that's great, but what about the other 99%? And while I'm sure that some in that 99% care about the issues regarding the 1%, if you have to be like, okay, well, are you more worried about trans rights, or are you more worried about how your children are going to eat tonight? Both people are probably going to vote for their children to eat that night.
And that's the funniest thing, is like a lot of people like blame Kamala's like the anti-woke crowd. They're like, well, Kamala was too focused on like trans issues. If you actually look at her campaign, she almost never talked about trans people at all. The only time I can recall any even remote mention of like trans people was it because it was a question during the debate. But outside of that, like her campaign wasn't like heavily influenced by like trans issues or LGBT issues in general at all. It was just a matter of like, look, I'm a progressive, so trans rights and stuff like that is very important to me. But having said that, the way you win elections is through the working class, and they just didn't appeal to the working class enough, which is funny considering the left, that's a big thing for them, that they're supposed to work in favor of the working class rather than big business. And they really dropped the ball on it during this election.
You mean to tell me that marching out like celebrities every other day wasn't enough to win over the working class. I always found that to be so crazy because I honestly feel like a celebrity who's been in Hollywood for the past 10 years, while, yeah, you know, people might like their movies, they know that those Hollywood celebrities live in mansions and never have to worry about the daily shit that the Daily American has to worry about. And they have you're not going to relate to anybody by marching out Leonardo DiCaprio or Robert De Niro or anything like that. Like, you might win over a couple people who are big Taxi Driver fans, but like, you're not going to win over the guy who is like, you know, the mechanic in the garage that's fixing everybody's cars and stuff like that. And I feel like they missed the mark there a lot. Like, I don't know. I watched this documentary on James Carville, the guy who did the Clinton. He was like the Clinton campaign guy. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but
no,
he's like a political guy on TV and stuff. He was really big in the 2000s and stuff. Ended up marrying a conservative woman, believe it or not. And like, she was like the representative for the Bush administration. That's how they met. They were opposite campaign people. Like, he was saying the whole time, he's like, you know, this is killing us, this focusing on the wrong things, you know? And he was right. You know, he was right. And, you know, it's sad to see, but the documentary follows him throughout the whole entire primary, all the way from when Biden decided to step down to when Kamala stepped up. And he goes, well, at least we have a fighting chance now. He goes, if Biden was in there, we were totally screwed because the guy couldn't debate, couldn't, you know, and now everybody thinks we're liars because, you know, clearly his mental health is declining. And he goes, we're losing the men. He's like, we're not paying attention to any of the men. In fact, if anything, we're telling them to go to the other side. Who's going to welcome with open arms? And I think I even fell into that, you know, like as somebody who obviously straight white male, a lot of times I'm being told nonstop that I'm terrible. I don't understand. I'm toxic. You know, girls would rather be in the woods with a bear than me. And you're like, how is that supposed to make me feel as a voter? Like, am I going to want to vote for that side, or am I going to want to vote for the side that's like, hey, you know what? Like, there's a place for you here, man. Come on over. We'll tell you about what we believe in and why you fit here. And I think that, if not more than anything else, is where this culture shift is taking place. It's like in those dimensions. And then, of course, and a lot of people I saw on MSNBC, we might as well just embrace the fact we're going to talk politics. But I saw on MSNBC
that's fine.
That the woman was like, oh, we can't talk to white women anymore because apparently they voted too many for Trump. So we need to just disown them and tell them they're not welcome in our spaces anymore. And I'm like, well, that's great. If you want to continue to keep losing all of your elections, then keep that vibe. But I think a reason that happens is because a lot of those, white women who voted that way have, white sons, and they're like, okay, I hear what you're saying about my son, and that makes me feel a little weird. It's a bit, much more macro level issue than just people want to give it credit for. I think. Do you watch Shoe on Head?
I do not watch Shoe on Head. No.
I thought she nails a lot of the stuff when she brings up when she talks about it, which is crazy because she's a female, but she seems to identify a lot with a lot of the issues that men go through,
Gotcha. Yeah. I think that's one of the things that, because there were some things you kind of mentioned there in terms of the perception of the left. I think that's where the right is really effective with a lot of their rhetoric, is they're able to convince people that this is what the left is like. And if you actually engage with serious leftists, not like I said, Twitter leftists, the people that don't live in reality, they exist in a bubble. Yeah. When you engage with serious leftists, they're nothing like that. A lot of this shit that people, if you ask someone who's anti-woke, for example, oh, this is, they're constantly shitting on if you're a white man, then you might as well not even exist. You're unworthy of existing. Real leftists don't think that way, but the right is really good about convincing people that that's who they are. So a lot of their rhetoric goes a long way because they're really good at convincing people that this is what the other side is like. Do you really want to associate with these people? Yeah.
Yeah, and I noticed I saw a couple tweets that were like, we need to have like our own version of Joe Rogan on the left, or we need our own version of Andrew Tate on the left, and I'm like, I don't think that that could even happen because the minute that the reason that what makes Joe Rogan and Andrew Tate the way they are is because like they're a bit problematic, but they're you know, the minute you are any kind of problematic on the left side, you end up getting, you get yourself in a lot of trouble to the point where you get, kicked out of circles. You'll go to a rally and everybody's throwing things at you, and now Andrew Tate's terrible. I would never suggest anybody follow his example, but
Right.
but I think Rogan's, he was liberal for a long, long time. And I think that he just got kind of tired of constantly having to defend himself for sitting down and talking to certain people or things of that nature. And I think that that's what kind of just, same thing with Elon Musk, like I think that they kind of got forced into the position they were in from just so much hatred and so much constant, like explaining that had to be had to be done.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from Rogan. I don't know if I necessarily agree with it, but I can at least understand like the mindset there.
Mm-hmm.
As far as Elon though, like no, Elon is just a piece of shit. That guy, like if you actually know the lore of what shifted him to the right, like he's a garbage fucking person. He basically his daughter came out as trans, and he was like so anti-trans that he like disowned his own daughter. Like if somebody brings up his daughter, he's like, no, my son died ages ago. They were corrupted by the woke mind virus. And it's just like, oh, so you're just a hateful piece of shit who's so hateful that you would disown your own flesh and blood because they live a lifestyle that you, for whatever reason, has decided that you don't agree with. No, he's just a garbage person.
Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with his child being trans. I didn't go. I don't know too much about the lore, and again, I've never been in that position, but I'd imagine that if I was, I'd probably say something, along the lines of, if this is what's going to truly make you happy, I'd probably be fine with it. Assuming that now I will say, I as a kid, I didn't know anything, so I'd probably, now, and I know, I know you're friends with Keffles, and I know her opinion on this stuff, but I definitely think that the 18 should be like a firm, and again, this is just my opinion as somebody who, was a reckless kid and thought I knew everything at that age, and being an adult now, you kind of realize you didn't really know a whole lot. Granted, I've never went through anything like that, but I've struggled with drug abuse for a decade and a half. And the fact that I'm even sitting here is like a miracle in itself. And, I just would prefer for people to wait until they were like of an age that you could know this, the finality of some of the decisions that you make in regards to that kind of stuff.
So, since you brought it up, because I wasn't planning to talk about this either, but since you brought it up,
Yeah.
when you say that you would prefer they'd wait till 18, what do you mean exactly?
Because, one thing I noticed, I have a 10-year-old daughter, and she goes through phases with a lot of things. Like one day she wanted to change her name, and she wanted to change it for a couple weeks, and then out of nowhere she's like, you know what? Okay, I'll keep my name. And then all of a sudden, one minute she wants to grow up and then like be this, and she swears to God that that's what she wants, and then she ends up changing her mind again. But sometimes these trends tend to stay a little longer in her mind than other ones, and I just, I see that as a firsthand parent, and I'm like, okay, so if she had the bright idea that she wanted, and now I realize that some doctors are a little more careful with when they give hormones and stuff to kids, but I feel like at the same time, I've also heard stories of kids walking into the doctor and coming out with hormones that same day. I don't know if you ever seen the Jubilee.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen.
Well, I saw a debate on a Jubilee panel between trans conservatives and trans liberals. This is actually the first video that I reacted to that ever like gave me some sort of virality, and a lot of the people on the conservative side were like, I was able to walk in and walk out that day with hormones.
Yeah, I can't speak on their experience, but as far as like, does that happen like on a regular basis, or is that something that's frequently happening? No. This is a common like talking point for like the right to speak out against like like trans rights or whatever. Because here's the thing, they use the kids as like an excuse to like, oh, we're just looking out for kids. They're not. They want to get rid of trans rights for everyone, not just the kids. The kids is just the entry point that they can use to convince normies that their position is the right position. But as far as like, there's this whole process of like diagnosis and like actually like getting to the bottom of like, is this a phase or is this kid really trans, known as like the WPATH standard of care. And like this process is something that's like been proven through studies to like actually be effective in determining, okay, is this kid really trans, and if so, what care do we need to provide to them to deal with their like gender dysphoria. It's not a case of just like a kid can just go to the doctors and say, hey, I'm trans, and then like, okay, cool, here's your hormones. It doesn't work that way. Maybe there are some like outlier situations where it happened and it shouldn't have happened. I think that that's probably a position that someone that doesn't follow this stuff would think like a progressive like me would be like, oh yeah, that's cool. No, that's not cool. That shouldn't happen. It shouldn't just be a case of like, hey, I'm like a kid or like I'm a teenager and I'm trans, so give me hormones. No, it shouldn't work that way. I do think that the process should be followed as it's outlined in the WPATH standard of care. And that if it does determine that like, yeah, this kid does look like they might be trans, then as long as they follow that appropriate like standard of care that's been established by medical experts, like I don't have a problem with that. But also I feel like a lot of people on the right, they have this like misinformed like idea of what that looks like. So that's why I specifically asked you, when you say they should wait till 18, like what do you mean? Are we talking hormones here? Are we talking, puberty blockers? Are we talking, surgery? Because a lot of people they'll go to the oh, they're mutilating the genitals of kids, and it's like, no, that's not happening. So that's why I was kind of like asking you, like, what do you mean exactly when you say that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely for surgery, I feel like should be after 18 because I mean,
okay, and that's actually this may surprise you. I agree. And in fact, a lot of like trans advocates also agree with that. That surgery you should wait till you're 18.
Yeah, I think a good way to compare it would be okay. Now, obviously, I don't have experience with gender dysphoria, but I do have experience with doctors and, being a former drug addict. And that's that there would always be doctors that overprescribe medications. There would be doctors that were easier to get medications from than other doctors. So we'd all know who those were. If we knew that there was a doctor out there that would write you a script, no problem. Everybody would know who this doctor is, and all of a sudden he'd have a waiting list, and I don't know if big pharma. I believe that pharmacies are not pharmacies particular, but big pharma is in on it. That let's get these people hooked, and then we can keep on our maintenance drugs when we get them clean. If we are lucky enough to get them clean, and I think that it's possible that could be something that happens with other doctors in there, and it would make sense to me that the same way that someone could walk in and like be a drug addict and walk out with a 30 like a 90 pill prescription of Vicodin or something like that. I feel like there's got to be outliers like that in any type of care, to be honest with you, and those might be the outliers you're talking about, but
yeah, exactly. The thing is like, I can't speak on behalf of those trans conservatives that you were referring to that happened in that Jubilee debate. I haven't seen it, and also I haven't lived their experience, so I can't speak on it. What I will say is that, like, yeah, of course, medical malpractice exists. There are bad doctors out there that prescribe people things that they probably shouldn't, or they don't follow the proper protocol for prescribing something. Sure, these are things that exist, absolutely. My only retort to that would be, just because there are bad people who inappropriately prescribe something or like inappropriately administer a certain type of treatment, does that mean we should take away the right for people to have access to that treatment if they need it? For me, the answer is no. Maybe the answer is different for you, but I don't think we should be taking treatment options away from people for any ailment just because there's that possibility that some doctor may engage in medical malpractice in regards to that treatment.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think that's fair. Again, I don't want to get too much into the weeds. I know that you're a huge trans
That's fair.
advocate.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, touching on it and just kind of comparing ideas, doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I just think it's one of those things where, without getting too in the weeds of it, I think that a lot of people have this perception of like, in this case, trans advocacy in regards to, transition and, minors, that they have this idea in their heads of what people like myself think is appropriate. And like the idea they have in their heads is so off base of where we actually stand. Obviously, there's still going to be some disagreements in regards to like some people are going to be in favor of trans kids and treatment for them, and other people are they're going to be some people are going to be in favor of it, some people aren't. But having said that, I think the idea that a lot of people on the right have as far as like how far the left goes in that regard, I think it's like way off base.
Well, it's like it's
sorry. I kind of got lost in my words there for a second, but I think you know the gist of what I was trying to say.
Oh yeah. I speak Tipster. It's my second language.
Base.
J Sauce, you're right. USA and New Zealand are the only countries where drugs can actually be advertised. We see them all the time. Ozempic is always advertised on TV, and it's like this stupid song's like, oh, Ozempic, and you're like, oh my god, dude, like you're trying to sell us diabetic drug. But now I will say I don't think I've ever sseen a commercial for a puberty blocker or anything like that, and probably for good reason. I don't know if that would go over well, but
it's one of those things where like I think also in general like the right makes a much bigger deal of it than it is. If you look at the overall global population, we're not even just talking about trans people in general. The overall global population of trans people is less than 2% of everyone in the world. Mm-hmm. And trans kids is even smaller than that. So when I look at like, right wingers, especially like far right people, make this massive deal about like trans people, it's like you're literally making your entire like existence about less than 2% of people in the entire world. Like, why do you care so much about how these people live their lives? It's unhinged. And there's no other way to put it other than like, with the exception of people who obviously don't know any better. I think that for a lot of those people, it just stems from because they're different than me. I don't like that. So it ventures into like just bigotry, basically.
It's rage baiting too. I mean, I'll be the first to admit, like as somebody who leans right, it's very easy to get people who love their country real riled up if you start, poking them a little bit with a couple certain topics. Like Matt Walsh is very, very good at it. I know he's like one of the loudest anti-trans people out there.
Yeah.
And it's easy to get people riled up. And then you just give them a scenario that would make most people feel uncomfortable and frame it in a certain way.
Well, it's like I said, like oftentimes like they'll use like the kids, right? And it's like, oh, we care about kids and we don't want anybody to hurt kids. And if you talk to anybody, they're going to tell you, oh yeah, I don't want anybody to hurt kids. So if you can convince them that they're hurting kids, then you can sway a lot of people to your position.
Now, here's a question for you. I noticed you said that like 2% of all the people in the world, but would you admit that there has been a bit of a renaissance in more people transitioning than, or is it just more publicized that people are transitioning?
I think what it is like it's a twofold thing. One, there is like a broader acceptance of trans people because it was one of those things where like nobody really talked about it or people didn't really understand it now. So there's a broader acceptance of it. So it's something that's more publicly talked about in that regard. But also it's just a case of like, we've had some famous people come out as trans now. A lot of us are very much involved in these online spaces where like, because trans people online can find communities where they can kind of like bond with other trans people and kind of like have someone to talk about the stuff that they're dealing with. It's kind of because we exist in these online spaces, we see it a lot more than like the average person. Because think about it. How often do you actually run into like a trans person in real life?
Well,
I'm willing to bet it's not very often, right?
I mean, I do, but I also work at a university, so
Oh, okay. Fair.
yeah.
Fair.
Uh,
But
but you're right. I don't, and maybe that's part of it is that growing up, I don't really ever remember seeing a trans person unless it was like on television or in the back of Hugh Grant's car when paparazzi caught them or like like weird stories like that. But
yeah.
now that the internet's so popular, it's like okay, you're platforming way more people who are in these communities.
Yeah, a lot of trans people find, like a home on the internet just simply because like they don't encounter many people like themselves IRL. So they're able to meet other trans people through the internet. And so I think that's just why we see it a lot more through these internet communities because they can actually find like-minded people or people that have the same experience as them through the internet. So it's just more noticeable there.
Yeah. Somebody asked, will Tipster ever have a moment like Keem where he unblocks everybody once a year?
I've done it before.
You
I thought about doing it recently, but I don't see the point now that the block button doesn't really do anything anymore.
I know I just found out I got blocked by Rosanna Pansino tonight. I'm taking it kind of hard.
Oh, the funny thing is, actually, when the whole Boblax thing happened, I actually tried to unblock everyone and like clear my block list, but my block list was so extensive that like, there's still people I have blocked, but X will not show me my block list. Like I can't see it, so I can't unless I physically visit every individual person's profile, which is unrealistic because I don't even remember half the people I blocked, maybe even more. But I can't see my block list to unblock anyone, so I actually tried to, and it didn't work.
Yeah,
I probably unblocked like 500 people, and then after that, I can't see my block list anymore. It won't load.
I was gonna say because that night that the Augie Nick debate went down, like they were shocked that one that you called in and two that you were first it was interesting because the way that it worked out was Nick realized that he was unblocked on Twitter by you, almost like it was like a sign of like a sign of things to come, and then you called in on top of that. So I was gonna say because it turned out that you did unblock a lot of people that you ended up speaking to that night.
Well, the funny thing was like they were blocked during most of that conversation. But literally like I was so shocked by the fact that Boblax like actually went as far as to block them. I figured he'd get mad about what they had to say and they'd roast him for like a few weeks or whatever, but then eventually like everything would blow over and he'd be cool. And it is what it is. But when he like actually blocked them, that was like I never saw that coming. So I literally like unblocked Augie and Nick at the time just to tweet out because I knew they'd see it eventually. Somebody in chat would mention it.
Mm-hmm.
I literally just tweeted, "Oh my god, I can't believe he just blocked them," and then I unblocked them so that they would eventually see it. And sure enough, they did. It was like the funniest fucking moment.
Yeah, that was
of that whole night.
That was a really cool moment. It was like I don't know, like I know you guys have had your issues, but like for one night only, it was like China and USA coming together, or Russia and the USA coming together to like to fight China or something like that. It was like it was just nice to see. It was just like a feel good moment in a commentary space where there's not many of those. It's usually just it's just everybody just shitting on each other.
It was something else. To be honest, like when it was happening, because I saw them ask me to call in, and I was laying in bed at the time. I was watching the stream on my TV, and so that's why it kind of took me a while to like respond and actually call in, because I was like, okay, I guess I gotta drag my ass out of bed and hop on my computer. So I did that, but like as I'm like waiting for like Nick to notice that I sent him the friend request and waiting to get added to the call, like I'm admittedly kind of nervous because I'm like, I don't know if this is a good idea. I might be setting myself up for some fucked up shit here. But whatever, I'll just kind of go with it and see where it goes, and it just kind of is what it is. Again, I wasn't going in there trying to like make friends with them again or anything. It's just kind of like, well, look, they want to know my thoughts on this Boblax shit. I'll just kind of tell them what I think, and that'll be it. This will be like one last sort of interaction or whatever. We can kind of agree that like Boblax was kind of a dick to everybody, and then just go our separate ways again.
Yeah, and you were on like a bit of a winning streak because I watched Chud a lot. I'm not sure how you feel about him, but you know, I've always kind of figured, I always kind of felt like he was kind of fair in a lot of criticisms that he gives.
I didn't have any issues with him until he decided it was a good idea to react to somebody who used to be a mod of mine doxing me. That kind of pissed me off, and then after that, I don't fuck with him no more.
Okay.
What's really fucked up too is I actually reached out to him like in DMs nicely too. I was kind of like, hey man, like I don't mind if you want to roast me or make fun of me because I had a bad take or something. That's cool, but could you like not, you know, platform someone who doxed me, like react to their video of them doxing me and post it to your channel and shit? And then he left me on red, so that kind of pissed me off. And then I was like, yeah, after that, I don't fuck with Chud. And there was a couple other creators who did the same thing, and I don't fuck with them either as a result of that. Well, I think that's fair, but yeah.
I mean, don't feel bad. Chud tells me he likes me all the time, and he leaves me on red too. So yeah, maybe I think that sometimes, you know, especially in this space. I will admit though, Kristen Ark, you always leave me on red, you motherfucker. Even though I already talked to you about this once, you still leave me on red. I don't know what the deal is. I don't know. I mean, how many subs do I got to get? How many views do I got to get to get not left on red? Jesus Christ. But no, I'm actually like, I'm friendly with Xylee too. I know you used to be friends with Xylee. You know, these are just kind of people I've ran into through mutual interests and topics and things of that nature. And Xylee's always been super, super cool to me. I know that I think that you guys have had like you guys used to be pretty close friends from what I understand.
Yeah, we used to.
Yeah, she hasn't really talked to me or anything about you, but I'm just you know, just trying to get an idea for some of, because you've known literally like everybody, right? You've at some point or another, like at least any of the major players, you've either had collaborations with, or I want to say rivalries with, or
yeah, I don't really know like the newcomers obviously, but yeah, people who were in the space when I was involved in it. Yeah, I've had some sort of interaction with pretty much everyone.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty. Even Keem, who's apparently like supposedly the godfather of commentary. Although I think Nick is slowly rising to that role now. A lot of people consider him to be like the gatekeeper. Like if Nick don't like you, you're not allowed. You're not welcome in the spaces. It's kind of seems to be the.
I think he's kind of had that like position thrust upon him by the rest of the community. I think we saw that a lot with the Boblax thing, where he's like, you know, you guys think that I get joy out of this shit, like ousting my friends when they do stupid shit, but this is like this isn't the exact wording he used, but I'm paraphrasing, like basically like the cross he's been given to bear by the rest of the community. Nick holds a lot of influence in that community, I think more so than he realizes.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't think he necessarily wants that level of influence, to the extent that like people are deciding what position to have based on whether or not Nick says, you know, what if a drama comes out, a lot of them are like, and they won't admit it, but like it's just a fact. If a drama's going on, people look to Nick like, okay, what does Nick think about it? Oh, this is what Nick thinks about it? Okay, cool. That's what I think about it too. Like a lot of those people, they won't admit it, but they don't think for themselves. They just look to whoever's the popular person in the community at the time, and oh, well, Nick said, you know, this, then that's what I think. And I'm not, to be clear, I'm not saying that to like shit talk Nick in that regard. It's not like Nick chose to be in that position, but that's just how some of those people are. It's just like, oh, Nick thinks this is bad. Okay, cool. I think it's bad too. Oh, Nick doesn't like this person. Okay, I don't like them either.
Yeah, I noticed that. Again, I don't think it's any kind of thing that he's intended to happen. I mean, of course, I know that there's.
Yeah, I don't think he's intended that to happen at all. I just think that a lot of people look up to Nick, and as a result, they shape a lot of their opinions based on the opinions of Nick. So, yeah, like, again, that's not like me trying to like shit on Nick. Like, oh, Nick is this fucking like guy who, you know, thinks he runs everything to the point that people just listen to his every. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just like, yeah, for whatever reason, people in the community look up to him so much that like his opinion on something holds weight. Maybe more so than he realizes. Yeah. Or maybe I wouldn't word it that way. Maybe more so than he intends it to.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah.
I find myself agreeing with Nick more than I disagree, but I certainly do not hold back if I find that something he's saying I disagree with. You know, and Nick probably has no fucking clue who I am, to be honest with you. But like, there's certain takes on certain creators sometimes that he has, and I'm just like, oh, I don't, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, dude. But okay, but I do respect
Well,
the fact.
if he doesn't know who you are, he definitely will now, because like I guarantee you, like pretty much anybody in commentary, especially the people who still can't stand me or whatever, all the little A-logs are going to tell them about this interview, and they're definitely going to watch it.
Well, they're gonna be pretty bored because we haven't really gone at it, you know. But again, I don't make content to be reacted to. I make it because one, I enjoy good conversation, and you know, and I just want to give interesting people an opportunity. Like, to be honest, with you, dude, like you, like I know that you might be humble about it, but I mean, you type in your name into a search bar, there's got to be 20, 30 fucking documentaries about you. You know, and your career, and I know you don't refer to it as that, and but it's, you know, that's somebody who left the mark, and I don't care whether for good or for bad. That's somebody who I find interesting and I want to hear from. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the way that I've been picking who I want to talk to. And it's not like it's not like I'm like Rogan or anybody who's. But it's just my personal interest and curiosity in speaking with people, and being in this niche. You know, why not talk to someone who's been around for a long time and somebody who's kind of been a polarizing figure, I guess, if that's a way that I, you know, could word it.
Yeah.
And, you know,
I mean, that's definitely like an interesting way to look at it, for sure. It definitely feels a little bit different when you're on the receiving end of it, and you're looking at like most of the videos. I haven't watched them, but like there's a few I've watched. I'm not going to pretend like I've never watched any of them, and it's always interesting seeing like what people think I am and knowing who I really am, and just seeing that like those two things just don't match up. Like I'm not going to pretend like there aren't any criticisms of me that are valid. There are. I've made my fair share of mistakes, but some of the perceptions that people have of me, or the opinions that people have of me, are just based on the most ridiculous shit. And it's just like, these people don't know me. They talk about me like they do, but they have no fucking idea who I am. It's also interesting, you know, as somebody who's very involved in like different spaces on the internet now, looking at the difference of opinions in terms of what matters to one community, or is what community sees as like a big deal, as opposed to like a different community. Because like, for example, I've had, you know, people that I met in like the online left political space, and they're like, yeah, you know, I had never heard of you prior to, you know, meeting you in this person's community or that person's community or whatever, or seeing one of your videos on this particular issue. So I looked you up and I found all these like fucking videos or whatever, and I watched them and I don't get it. Like, what did you do wrong? I can't begin to tell you how many times I've heard that in this particular space, where they're like, I watched these like videos on you and I don't understand what you did wrong. And I just kind of like, I had some bad takes that are worthy of criticism, but at the same time, like a lot of the shit I get criticism for, it's just like, I feel like most people don't give a fuck.
if you don't mind me, if you don't mind me asking, all right, it might be a little Oprah-y here, but in your opinion, what does it take that you feel like you've had that's been really bad that you wish that you didn't put out?
The one thing I'll say, this is one that's like a big go-to for like a lot of people, is like the Vosh defense. I wish I was better at articulating my point on that, because a lot of people, they instantly took that as like, oh, so you're defending like Vosh's possession of like Lolly or whatever, and it's like, no, that's not what I'm doing. My biggest issue that I had, and if you look at my original tweet on that situation, my biggest issue was the clips of his old debates and stuff being misrepresented by H3H3. If you look at my original tweet on that situation, there's no mention of the folder situation at all. But everybody like made it about the folder situation. But the way I responded to that, instead of like clarifying my position, I kind of like responded to that poorly, in a way that made people think that I was defending that. And so that's kind of like one where if I had to revisit that situation, honestly, I wouldn't have gotten involved at all. Like, I still hold the position that, like, I think that his clips were misrepresented. And I would go as far as to say that I don't think that, like, Vosh is a threat to kids or anything like that. I think if people are sus about that content that he had on his computer, I think that they have every right to be sus about it. And I wouldn't even say that they're out of line to be sus about it. But the bottom line is, like, if I had to go back in time and revisit that again, I just wouldn't have got involved.
Was Vosh a friend of yours at that time?
No,
No?
he's still not now.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah,
There's just the bigger picture here, just to kind of paint the bigger picture here, is like I got really frustrated, and Tommy C kind of talked about this when I had my last conversation with him. That, like, one of the things that really frustrated me, and it frustrated him too, is how every fucking story at the time in the community was either about someone being outed as a pedo or people trying to find the most mundane reasons to make someone out to be a pedo. And it got really fucking annoying. So I got so, like, laser focused on my genuine hatred for the fact that, like, you know, when I started in the drama scene, it was like making fun of people for doing stupid shit, or it was like mocking people for having fights over really dumb shit. Like, it was funny stuff that was actually entertaining to watch. There's nothing for me that's entertaining about obsessing about making everybody out to be a pedophile. Yeah. So it just became this, like, tunnel visioned, like, frustration with that, to the point that, like, yeah, I probably defended some people that I didn't need to defend because I was just so annoyed by that. But yeah.
Now Tommy C, like, I saw when I was doing some research to learn a little bit more about you, I saw a clip where it was you and Tommy C talking. I think you were at Tommy C's show, and Tommy C said that, like, you were like somebody who he almost referred to you as, like, his therapist. And how does a relationship go from in your perspective? How does a relationship go from, like, Tommy C's coming to you, telling you literally everything that's, like, kind of on his mind, to you guys all of a sudden not speaking anymore? How did that, like, play out from your perspective?
So I kind of, like, addressed this a little bit in our last conversation, but in case you missed it or something like that, basically what happened was me and Tommy were actually still cool after I had my, you know, falling out with the broader, like, commentary community. Him and I were still on good terms. We would DM each other. Mostly we love retro video games, so we talk about retro video games together and stuff. But, like, we were fine. And then what kind of, like, upset me is he was well aware of the fact that I had zero interest in interacting with commentary people at all. I just didn't want to engage with that scene anymore. And there was a situation where, when he was still on the lolcow podcast, they were like, yo, we should get Tipster on here. We should get Tipster on here. And he was the only person in the call that still had me as a friend on Discord. And so he added me to a call, knowing damn well that I wouldn't want to engage in that conversation to begin with. So that kind of pissed me off, and I was like, yeah, fuck that shit. And then that was, like, the deal breaker for me. Now, granted, I can look at that situation in hindsight and say that, like, I probably overreacted. I probably could have better handled that by, you know, not joining the call. Just like, okay, they added me to this Discord call, but I don't actually have to join. I could just ignore it. And then later on talk to him and be like, yo, that was kind of fucked up. You know, I don't want to engage with those people. Why did you add me to that call? You know, so that probably would have been the better way to handle it. But at the time, that's the way I handled it. And that was, like, the deal breaker for me at the time. And even Tommy, when I told him that, he's like, oh, no, I can understand that. I can, you know, that's fine. I think that's a valid reason to be upset.
What was it specifically that it was about those people that, like, you were like, not really interested in chatting?
I don't know. I just didn't want to engage in, like, the drama shit anymore. I just wanted to move on and do something different.
Because
and then also at that time, like, the feud between me and that community was, like, very heated at that time. So it's just like, no, I don't want to engage with them. You know, they've at that time, my perception was they've said some really fucked up shit about me, and they're constantly, like, A-logging me and shit. So no, I don't want to fuck with them. But yeah, that was kind of my perception at the time. So I was like, no, I don't want to engage with them. I have zero interest in that. And so when I got dragged in that call, it, like, really pissed me off. But yeah, like I said, in hindsight, I could have handled it better.
I find it interesting too because now you could tell the difference between, I guess, some of the people who've been in this space compared to a lot of the people who are coming into this space. It's almost like a honor to get invited to those calls now, as where like but from your perspective, it almost feels like you don't want nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, like, my position's a little bit different now in hindsight, in the sense that like I still don't want to be involved in that space. But like, if I get invited to a conversation where I'm like, yeah, I feel like I actually have something to contribute to the conversation, I'll at least consider joining the call. But like, if it's a situation where like, no, I'm not really interested in talking about it, or I'd rather not be in the call, I'll just tell them, no, I'm not really interested, but thanks for the invite. It's a little more civil now. I may not want to be involved in that space still, but I'm not just going to be like, no, fuck them. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
It's just kind of like, no, thanks for the invite, but no thanks.
Do you think that's something that's coming from wisdom of growing older, or is that it's just like a part of like your inner personal, like what's the way I want to put this? Like,
I think it's just a case of like, I can look back hindsight and say that, yeah, I still stand by my decision to leave commentary, and I still stand by a lot of the reasons why I chose to leave. But having said that, I do think that on the way out, I could have handled the situation better. Like, we probably could have been not necessarily like friends or whatever, but we could have been on civil terms. Like, I didn't have to handle it as poorly as I did. That's really all it is. I can look at something in hindsight and say like, yeah, I didn't handle that so well.
Well, in the moment, I'm sure your emotions were a little higher than they are right now. Because
well, there was a lot of frustration with like a lot of things that I said being like either intentionally misrepresented to be malicious in some cases. I think for every case, to be clear, but in some cases. And then there were other times when like I was just genuinely like misunderstood. And when people get their mind set on like this is what they think about someone or a position that someone has, there's almost zero opportunity to like, no, this is actually what I mean. Because no matter how many times you clarified it, the mob has already made up their mind. So there was like genuine frustration with that. And then there was like genuine frustration with some of the things I've seen happening in, the community, and like also like communities that orbited our community that I just wasn't too happy with, and just deciding that I didn't want to be a part of that anymore. That, those frustrations combined with, trying to like at the time handle it in a way that I thought it would be like, hey, like, yeah, I'm not in the drama community anymore, but like we're still cool, right? At the time I thought I was making a good faith effort to like handle it in a civil manner, but in hindsight I could look at it and be like, no, I did kind of a shit job at trying to be civil about it.
Yeah, no, I think that I mean, it takes balls to be able to admit like where you were wrong and stuff. Is there anybody who was part of that I guess that previous life of what you're living now that you kind of wish in particular that you did things different with, or like you wish that you kind of, maybe I wish I could still have open communications with that person, but maybe not that person? With that, you don't have to give any particular names if you don't feel comfortable, but or is it just like the whole group? You're just happy to be away from the whole group, or was there anybody in there who you felt actually a little closer to than other people that you might be like, you know what, I kind of once in a while it would be nice to be able to reach out and just kind of bounce some ideas off of this person?
Can you? Because I'm not sure I understood the question.
Yeah,
can you rephrase that?
I butchered it. Okay, so when you left the whole so let's just put the whole commentary community into like a little ball. Let's imagine each one of those balls are a separate one with a different name on it. Is there any one of those balls that you enjoyed like bouncing a little more than the other ones that you might have wished that you didn't just throw away with the whole sack? Does that make any sense? Is it a little clearer? It's a hard question to phrase because I'm kind of like
are there aspects of the community that I miss outside of some of the other ones? Is that basically what you're saying?
Yeah, but in that's a great question though too. So I'd love to get your opinion on that. So let's but I was particularly talking about members of the community. But also,
so are there certain members of the community that
you miss more than others? I guess would be the easiest way to answer. I don't know why the fuck I had such a hard time getting that out. I wake up at 5 a.m. for work.
See, I'd say one of the people I was kind of closest to at the time was Boblax. So like when I had my falling out with Boblax, like it kind of sucked. It was probably one of the ones that upset me the most, to be honest, especially the way it happened. The fact that like now everybody knows the truth about like he was really dishonest about how that situation played out. But that situation kind of sucked. I kind of liked some of the conversations that myself and him had together, and I don't know what is going up with my audio on my stream. It just keeps disconnecting from my chat. They keep not being able to hear it. But whatever. In any case, it doesn't matter. I think I'm going to actually just go ahead and end my stream. So chat, just giving you a heads up, I'm going to end my stream because I don't know what's going on with the technical issues, and I'll have to sort it out after stream. But take it easy, chat. But back to the question. Yeah, I mean, I was pretty close with Boblax, and so that kind of sucked, and I kind of wish things played out differently there. But considering a lot of what happened there was kind of out of my control, it was more like a Boblax thing. I don't know how that could have been fixed, honestly.
So then that had to probably feel like even double kicking the nuts when you did those bully streams. Then,
well, what really pissed me off about those is there was a lot of comments he would make where, like, you know, in private when we were cool, it was stuff that he didn't think was like a big deal, or he would tell me like, yeah, I don't understand why you get shit about this stuff. It's kind of shitty that people like make fun of you for this or that or whatever. And then like, you know, when it became cool to hate me, then all of a sudden like those were like the number one thing he would shit on for the bully stream. So it's like, okay, did you actually believe the shit you were telling me in private, or like is this the real you? Like which one is it?
Yeah, that's what a mind fuck. You know?
Yeah,
like,
pretty much.
When all that went down, it seemed like you were taking some W's back to back, and a lot of people were like, "Get him, Tipster!" You know, did you feel a sense of like that vibe in the air? Did you feel like you were getting a little more support than you had been getting?
I didn't really think about that all that much, to be honest, just because my goal wasn't to get a W or anything. My goal was I had this frustration with Boblax for a while, and I never really had like an outlet to talk about it because at the time I was kind of like the guy everybody shat on. So no, there was no point in me explaining my side of what happened there, or at least that's how I perceived it. Because like, well, they've already decided they don't, you know, fuck with me, or they hate me or whatever. So why am I gonna bother like telling my side? So when I saw what was going on and I saw the similarities between, you know, like for example, Nick was dealing with Boblax and like what I had to deal with, and I was like, well, maybe this is a chance for me to actually tell my side. So that was all that was really on my mind. It wasn't like, oh, I'm here to collect W's or like get in the good graces of the community again. It's just a matter of like Boblax treated me the same way, and maybe this is my chance to show people that yeah, I had to deal with the same shit that you guys are dealing with now.
That's I like that. It's a chill way to look at it. Yeah, because I mean, just from an out, like, you know, someone new and paying attention to that whole situation, you know, it almost seemed like before the Boblax situation and after, it was almost like a bit of like a ray of light was kind of shining on you that hadn't been there before it all went down. So I was just kind of curious if you felt like you noticed that from your side. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I definitely saw people saying that, like, you know, Tipster W or whatever, and like joking about let him back in the house and stuff, but that I just wasn't interested in that. It wasn't about collecting a W for me. It was just about, yeah, I dealt with the same shit they were dealing with at the time, and I just wanted an opportunity to show people that this is maybe what you thought you knew about this situation wasn't exactly what actually happened, and maybe you guys should see that.
Yeah. Now the next going back to the question that you actually said that I thought would be interesting to hear your opinion on. Is there any aspects of commentary that you do miss?
So the only thing I really miss is like there was this real sense of community interaction between the creators. That's one thing you don't see a whole lot of on like the leftist streamer space. There's no after hours for the left, for example, the leftist streamer space, where like all the creators just kind of call in and hang out and stuff. A lot of them are a little bit more isolated with their own communities, just because like so many shitty people, they're used to getting attacked by so many shitty people that they just kind of keep to themselves. So like if there was one thing I do miss, it's not necessarily the community interaction specifically with those people. It's just that sense of community interaction. There's not a whole lot of that in the leftist streamer space.
I can kind of see that. Another question for you, like originally I had messaged you and I was like, hey, you know, I'd love to have you on, and you were like, sure. And then I think at some point you were like, yeah, I don't know if I'm up for an interview. And then out of nowhere you're like, you know what, I will do it. What exactly changed in your mind that made you decide to, you know, give me a shot and come on, knowing that you didn't really know much about me?
In all honesty, like I just kind of hit like a place there for a second where I was having like I was not in a good mental headspace. So like originally when you reached out to me and like, yo, can we do this interview? I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. It's no big deal. Why not? But then I kind of hit this like mental health like rough patch where I'm just like, no, I just kind of like need to figure this shit out first before I do anything. So I always had it like in the back of my mind that like eventually like I'll have a conversation with this guy. It's just now it's not a good time. So once I got that shit sorted out, then that's when I reached out to you. I'm like, okay, yeah, like if you still wanted to have that talk, we can have that talk.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because you know the last thing I'd want to do is you know, and I think I said this to you, is like I don't want to interview anybody who doesn't want to be here. I mean, I'm not going to get anything out of you if we were to talk like that. It just seems like if you felt like you were there just out of pure obligation and not be, you know, I don't feel like you know, the first off, the answers would be, you know, lackluster at best, and you wouldn't really have an insight in the way that I'm actually like kind of seeking. You know what I mean? Does that make any sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to be clear, like because I didn't know you, like I didn't know what your intentions were with this conversation or anything like that either. I didn't know like if going into it you were going to be malicious or what. I was just like, you know what, I'll call in and I'll see what happens. Worst case scenario, if things go real shitty, I'll just leave. You know, there's nothing stopping me from leaving. So
yeah, I felt that vibe too. I was like, he probably thinks that I want to like blood sports him or set him up to, you know, platform myself high or something, which you know, easily could have.
Yeah, and to be clear, like I didn't think that was what I didn't specifically think that was going to happen. I just didn't know what was going to happen. So I was like, I'll just go into it, and you know, like I've done in the past, if the call goes really shitty, like there's nothing stopping me from clicking that disconnect button.
Yeah.
So you must be doing pretty good if I'm still here.
I know, man. You were like, I got an hour for you, and I think we're going almost 2 hours. That's awesome, dude. I really do appreciate it. I mean, I didn't get mad about it at all. I was disappointed, of course, because you know, right after all that stuff, it would have been a great time to pick your brain. But you know, again, I'm not here to fuck anybody over. I'm not here to hurt anybody. I'm just here to learn about people, and you know, I guess I'm just a hippie at heart. You know what I mean, man? I'm just all about those chill vibes, and I know that blood sports makes for better content, and you know, I'm sure if we and you got into a streaming match, it'd be all over the internet tomorrow. But honestly, that's not what I do content for. I do it because I feel like there's enough of those people, and you know, it'd just be nice to kind of have a place to go where it's just kind of more like a laid back environment where people can just kind of chill, be themselves, and not worry about getting too judged. I mean, first, I'll be the first to tell you, Tipster, dude, if you go into my history, dude, I made fucking, now none of it was on the internet, thank fucking God. But like, that's, I think, the difference between somebody like you who's been online for a really long time and someone like me who's just started doing online. All my, like a lot of stuff I fucked up in my life happened in front of like my family's eyes, not like an entire audience. And unfortunately, you know, being on as long as you have, there's a permanent record of any time that you would make a mistake or do things that maybe others felt were mistakes. That's got to be a tough situation to be in, to live up to that almost unreachable goal that people can set for humans that are in this space.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think considering what you've been through and still go through, like I saw, I think I might have saw one time when I was watching Chud, I think you were talking about how it was upsetting you that when you put in your name, like honestly, when I tried to find you, all I got was documentaries. I couldn't actually find you on YouTube, and I think I remember Chud talking about a situation where you were upset about the fact that you were getting like ratioed by these other channels that were talking about you as opposed to even giving you the opportunity to be seen, which has got to be an incredibly frustrating place to be in.
Yeah. Well, it's a thing where like you're trying to like move on from like this version of yourself that you no longer want to be anymore. And then you're constantly being reminded of it. So it's not so much like a lot of people would look at it like, oh, he's just mad because people are like shitting on him or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, like in the beginning, yeah, there was some frustration with that, but it's just kind of like I just kind of want to move on from that version of myself, and I want to do different things. I want to be my perception of like a better person, essentially. And like I'm constantly reminded of it because of all these like stupid fucking videos or whatever. So it's a little frustrating, but I think the biggest thing is like I tried for the past like 2 years or whatever to just kind of like rebuild with like a new audience and stuff. And it's kind of gotten to that point now where I'm like, yeah, it's not gonna happen. So I'm just kind of doing my own thing now. I think the YouTube ship has sailed for me, so it's just time to move on to other things.
I wouldn't say that. Have you ever thought about like a rebrand?
I mean, I suppose that could work. I just don't know if I care enough anymore. I've been on YouTube since 2006, so I think part of me also wants to like move on.
Well, I think that's
So,
also I think that also could be what's hurting you from getting that new audience is that the algorithm knows. I'm sure you're familiar with how that works. It knows your
Mhm.
channel to be basically all them years of commentary where your biggest success is. So, you're doing these new style videos. Well, I guess not really because you started off doing it this way, but um, it's harder for the algorithm to find out who exactly they should be giving those to because they're sending them to the people who were probably around when you were doing your commentary. And I don't know. I thought maybe I would think that maybe just throwing out the idea of not you don't have to change your whole name or anything, but maybe just a different channel name or something like that, like Tipster Reborn or something like that. You can figure out the name yourself, but I think that you'd still have plenty to offer the community, man. Like I feel like you left an impact. I mean, you can't ignore that, right? You realize that you've left quite the fucking impact on the internet. That's not easy to do.
Um, I think what I've done is over the course of the past, and I only say this because I saw a pretty funny animation that somebody made of Nick Deorio earlier today, um, where they animated. I guess it was like a stream clip of Nick. He was at the time he was like mocking me because I'm like, yo, I'm having so much more fun just streaming Resident Evil now, and he said something along the lines of like, no, you're supposed to be the cow for me to milk to make money or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of jokingly respond to that with, I think my impact is that over the course of the past couple of years, I've made a lot of people a lot of money.
Yeah, I would say so. I think you've been thoroughly milked, Tipster.
Can some of y'all who made that good money off of me can you come to my streams and share the wealth a little bit, please? I'd appreciate it. It's the least you can do
Yeah,
with how much bags I've generated, y'all. No, just
likeness
kidding.
rights, like Turkey Tom, cough it up, bitch.
I don't think it's gonna happen. Turkey
Yeah.
Tom, even when I was part of commentary, he was never super fond of me. So I big X'd out on that one.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just like real life. You can go to places, and sometimes you just rub people the wrong way, and
Okay, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Funny story about Turkey Tom.
sure.
I'll never forget this. So I mentioned a second ago that Turkey Tom just never liked me, which is fine. I don't need people to like me. But there's this funny story where Augie was cool with me obviously at the time, and Augie's doing a stream with Tom, and I come up as part of the conversation, and Tom says that guy fucking sucks or something like that. That tipster guy fucking sucks. And so Augie just like outright asks him, "Hey, like, why do you hate tipsters so much?" And Tom says, "That guy's just really fucking annoying. Like, he'll blow up your DMs and annoy the shit out of you, and I just fucking can't stand it about him." And my jaw dropped when I saw that clip because I'm like, I've only DM'd this guy once, and the conversation we had was 2 DMs back and forth. It was about this creator that got wrapped up in some controversy, and Tom had done a video about him, and he started like schmoozing up to me. So I'm like, hey, I've been getting like engagement from this guy. I forget his name at the moment, but I've been getting like he's been engaging with my tweets and he's been following me and stuff like that. Is this dude still like a bad dude, or has he changed? And Tom responded with, "Oh no, he's still a piece of shit." And I'm like, "All right, cool. I just wanted to, check with you on that. Thanks." And he's like, "Yeah, no problem." And that was it. That was the only conversation we ever had. So I'm like watching him say he hates Tipster because he like blows up your DMs and annoys you. And I remember reaching out to Augie after that stream, and I was like, "I just wanted you to know that when Tom said what he said on your stream, that was a lie. Like, I've only DM'd this guy one time, and it was literally just 2 messages exchanged back and forth, and that was it. So I have no idea what the fuck he's talking about."
Well,
But
and
I don't know. That just like kind of rings in my head as like it's still a funny story from back in the commentary days.
yeah, in Tom's defense, though, his catch line is, "I've been Turkey Tom, leave me alone." Like, maybe he means that fucking seriously. Like, don't even send him one.
Maybe 2 DMs is enough.
You don't message me, son. I message you. If you message me, you're on my shit list permanently.
I guess 2 DMs back and forth is enough.
Hey, Tom's the king of the castle right now. I'd probably
he's an interesting character for sure. But like I feel like he's kind of like ventured off into his own sphere now. Like he still engages with commentary people from time to time, obviously, but it's not as much as it used to be. He's kind of like in his own stratosphere now. Like me personally, like obviously, like he said some really fucked up shit about me and people that I care about. But do I have any like personal bone to pick with Turkey Tom? No, it's just kind of he exists and it is what it is. I think the only thing that I legitimately like got pissed at him for in recent times is he covered a drama involving a trans creator known as Poppy.
Mm-hmm.
And like in his video, he spread like literal misinformation. He said that I was like best friends with this person and that I defended them even though they did this like horrible shit. And I corrected him. I did like a public Twitter call out and I commented on the video and I said, "Bro, I never defended this person in regards to what they did. I have publicly disavowed this person. So I have no idea where you got this information, but it's just wrong, right?" And he never responded to it. So it's just kind of like, okay, whatever. But outside of that, like I don't have any personal like beef with the guy or whatever. He exists and it is what it is.
Yeah. Speaking of one of your old buddies, what's up, Xylee? Xylee's in the chat. But yeah, so how often do you find yourself in these videos of other people just being included in this stuff? What's up, Raymundo? Damn, we got all the big hitters showing up to the chat.
I don't know because like I said, a lot of the times like I don't know about this shit unless like somebody I'm friends with reaches out to me and tells me about it. So I don't really know.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to honestly,
does it happen more often than I realize?
I'm guessing probably a lot. I mean, if you were to sit down and watch all the videos on YouTube, it would probably take you like a week to get through them.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I know there's a lot of videos, but like I think you specifically mentioned like casual mentions of me in like videos and stuff, and I'm like, I don't know, does that happen a lot?
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, when I was doing some research for this interview, I there was plenty to pick from. So I was just curious if because you had mentioned that you got brought up in a video that wasn't technically about you, but you got included in that,
Mm-hmm.
So I was asking if you're like, I guess you wouldn't really know if nobody brings it to your attention. So I guess you wouldn't really.
Yeah, because I don't watch this stuff. So if somebody tells me about it, then like obviously then I know about it. But outside of that, like I don't. If there's other like casual mentions of me in videos like that, I'm not aware of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the only one where that one specifically, the only reason like I watched that one is because in the kind of like leftist creator space, like the Xena and Poppy drama was like a big thing that a lot of people were aware of. And a lot of people in that space were like kind of concerned about it because there's already this like bad perception of like trans people that like that's the kind of people they are. So with the allegations that were against this particular trans person, there was a lot of concern that like, you know, if this story spreads that, you know, they're gonna feel like that validates their opinions that all trans people are like these like degenerate freaks or whatever. So there was a lot of concern about that. And as a result of that, that particular video, I watched it of my own choosing, but I didn't go into it expecting myself to get mentioned in the video. It just so happened that I'm watching this video and all of a sudden, like I get mentioned in it, and the information that's said about me is false. Like the logic they had was that I was a Poppy defender because I had defended Poppy in the past in regards to a completely different situation that had nothing to do with this, like at the time, recent drama. Because what happened was Boblax had quote tweeted them, which resulted in them getting a lot of harassment, and so I kind of like defended them in that regard. And that was like a whole year prior to the other stuff that came out against them, stuff that myself and many other people were like, absolutely not. This is unacceptable. We disavow this person, like 100%. But that got spun into Tipster was one of this person's defenders, and it's like, no, I wasn't. I actually publicly distanced myself from them and disavowed them and spoke out against what they did. But yeah.
Yeah, that's got to be a frustrating situation to be in. You had mentioned
For sure.
You had mentioned that you felt like you were when you were part of the group that you were. I guess you said you kind of felt like you were like picked on a little bit in the group. Is there any reason you feel like that might have been the case? Like, do you feel like
I don't know if that's exactly like how I would put it. There were times when like things get said and like it upsets you because you're like, well, that's not exactly representative of like something I've said, or that's not exactly representative of something that I did, sort of thing. So there were times when something like that would happen. Like a good example for just to kind of give an example of there was the whole like I cheated on my wife scandal sort of thing. And it's like, no, that's not what happened at all. But it often would get like misrepresented as that. So that would be a little bit frustrating, especially when there's people that you consider your friends that are kind of like they seem to be validating that opinion of you. And it's just like, no, that's not true. That's not based in reality. So stuff like that get a little frustrating. I think what I tried to articulate earlier was that there were times when stuff like that would happen, and just because of the public perception of how the commentary community works, I felt like I couldn't express my frustration with that to those people in private, when in reality, I think that I could have, and I just, because of my bad perception, I didn't. Like the one we mentioned before was like Nick. You know, like I didn't feel like I could talk about these things to Nick or express my feelings to these things to Nick. But seeing the grace that he gave Boblax in the DMs that came out during that situation, I can see like, oh no, I misjudged him. Like if there was something he said that upset me, I could have come out to him and told him, yeah, that I actually didn't think that was cool. And we could have had a conversation about it.
Do you think Nick would have given you the same grace as he did Boblax?
I think that there's probably a chance, depending on the circumstances, that like we might have stepped away from the conversation, not agreeing with each other, but at least he would have been willing to have that conversation. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we might not have necessarily agreed on everything, but at least he would be willing to have that conversation. Whereas I thought like, at the time, I thought it's not even worth having the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Going back to what you were saying about the, I guess that the people accusing you of cheating on your wife, which I personally, you know, I'm not, I saw some people in some random videos talk about some of that stuff. Was it just like edgy jokes that you were making that got you kind of this idea?
It was just like adult like jokes or like flirty jokes with like friends, something that I am perfectly comfortable publicly admitting I still do with some of my friends.
Mm-hmm.
But those got leaked out of context by someone, and as a result of that, it was like misrepresented to be me like genuinely flirting when it's like no, it's just this was a friend that I told I had very adult jokes with or whatever, and it's whatever, it's harmless. But that person was mad at me at the time, and they leaked those out of context because we had a falling out in a way to like make it seem like there was something more to that than there was. And the funniest thing about it is that you know, my wife's aware of all these conversations. My wife's aware of all these interactions, and she doesn't give a shit about any of them. So,
Yes,
yeah.
some people just have that relationship with their partner where it's just like, yeah, I trust you. Like, go.
Yeah, the way I try to articulate it at the time is that, like, you know, different relationships have different boundaries. And, you know, there may be something that, you know, I engaged in that, like somebody else's relationship, that would be off limits. And that's fine. You know, as you establish those boundaries with your partner and you respect those boundaries. But it's not a one size fits all for every relationship. And so I can understand that there may be things that I'll joke about with friends that maybe another person's relationship that wouldn't be acceptable. And that's fine. You know, if that's what works for your relationship, that's cool. My wife doesn't have a problem with it. So it's whatever. Now, obviously, if it ventured into like actual like flirtation, like serious flirtation, or if it ventured into like, you know, obviously engaging in like romantic behavior with some of those friends, of course,
Mm-hmm.
that would not be acceptable in my relationship. But that's not what's happening.
Yeah.
So.
Can you tell can you tell me a little bit about this person on X that went by the name Dixter? Is I saw that in a video. Who was this person? Was this like somebody who was specifically trolling you?
Who?
I guess there was a I don't know. I saw it in someone's. I think it was Toastify's video. There was a person who was on X went by the name Dixter, and I think that they got in an argument with you or something about, and you said that they were like acting like they were you or something, pretending to be you. I mean, you never know.
I'll be honest. I'll be honest. I don't remember anybody specifically named Dixter. But it's like a known meme in like the commentary space that like I was somebody who there were tons of like fake tipster accounts on Twitter. And there were like situations where like these fake tipster accounts would get me into trouble because they would tweet something pretending to be me, and people would start asking me about it, like, why would you say this or whatever? And so I'd have to explain to them that's not me. It's like a fake account or whatever. But yeah, I don't remember anybody named Dixter specifically.
Okay. Yeah. If I ever find that, I'll send it to you. You can see if you can make sense of it. Because I don't know. It was like a back and forth going on, but I don't know. There's so many documentaries about you that it's hard to tell which ones are real and which ones aren't. But I was, you know, like I said, I realized that people tend to embellish things online, so I you know, try and take everything with a grain of salt. But I just, as we're talking, like sometimes things are popping up in my head.
I mean, it sounds like a funny moment for sure.
Yeah. So I was like, I gotta find out about this Dixter character. Hang on, I'm just trying to see. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, man. Again, like, I appreciate you take. I don't really know what else I could possibly bring up. Unless like, the only other question I have is like, I know that you're friends with Keffles. I know that she's found herself in controversy. Do you feel that friendship at all has like kind of reflected on you at all in any way from maintaining that friendship and staying loyal to her?
I obviously think that there's a lot of people who, you know, for one reason or another, they dislike her, and you know, people are going to have the opinions they have on her, which is fine. People are entitled to have their own opinions, and I do think that by proximity to that relationship, that yeah, sometimes I do kind of catch strays as a result of it. Um, but that's just kind of to be expected, you know, when people decide that for one reason or another they dislike someone, they're also going to, you know, dislike people who associate with them. So it just kind of is what it is. It's not something that I dwell on too much.
No. Yeah, I feel you. Well, I mean, I don't know. Again, that was probably the only other question I had. I don't know what else I could possibly. I think I've talked to you about everything regarding, you know, any drama that I've actually been around to witness. I don't want to, again, I don't. What are your plans moving forward? I know I had a guy on named Dan Frampton. He does the Art of Slop. He said, make sure you don't just talk about Tipsters past. I want to hear about what Tipsters plans for the future are. So what is your goals here moving forward?
Honestly, if I'm being completely honest at the moment, I don't even really know. I'm kind of in this weird like spot at the moment where like I don't even know if like this whole content thing is something I care all that much about anymore. Like I enjoy streaming. Like I'll still go on Twitch and I'll like I was earlier playing video games or whatever. But as far as like where do I stand in terms of like the future of my content or whatever, I don't really know at the moment. I'm just kind of existing.
Yeah, respect for that. I personally would like you not to quit doing content. You know, I'm sure there's some. I'm sure, as Nick would say, there's still some milk in there, Tipster.
If I ever did, it would just be a thing of like because of the kind of always what I felt about it. You know, when you do it as long as I have, because I've been a content creator since 2006.
Mm-hmm.
It's a long fucking time. So my kind of outlook on it was like the day I quit it, it'll just be because it's not fun for me anymore. Because at the end of the day, when I started making content, it wasn't to get famous or it wasn't to make lots of money or whatever. It was just looking for something to do with my time. And it's always, even when I was making decent money at it, it was always more of a hobby than a job. It's why I never quit my day job, because it was more of a hobby to me.
Well,
so
that's
if I ever
move.
left, it would just be because I don't have fun doing it anymore. And that would be it.
Yeah, and there's no point in torturing yourself, you know.
Pretty much, like, yeah. Why force yourself to do something that you don't have fun doing anymore?
I think a lot of guys that are coming up right now are not worrying about the burnout, and the burnout is something that is real. And if you don't take time with your family or take time to just step away from the computer a little bit every once in a while, or you know, just do something else at all, I definitely think that burnout is a real issue for a lot of people that they're going to end up having to deal with at some point or another. Either that or your takes are going to get worse because you just refuse to take any time off. You're going to be more tired. Everybody's chasing this internet gold rush that we got going on right now. But like, that's one thing I've always admired about Nick is that Nick also always kept his day job. And, you know, I admire people who are willing to, you know, work, you know, go do a hard day's work and then come home and then focus on their passions. You know, I think these people that
I'll tell you, it's a difficult balancing act for sure. Like I look back at like some parts of my life as like a content creator, and I'm like, sometimes I wonder like, was this like wasted time because of the fact that like, you know, I did, you know, work a normal 9 to 5, and then I would come home and I would invest so much of my time in my content. And sometimes I look back at that and I wonder like, were there better ways I could have invested this time than focusing so much on this shit? Kind of as cringe as it sounds, kind of chasing a dream in a sense.
yeah.
You know?
No, I get it, man.
Yeah.
I get it. Well, Tipster, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you, you know, pushing that hour limit back to pretty much. It seems like you would just keep letting me ramble, but I don't want to just keep asking you stuff for the sake of asking you stuff. I feel like I've kind of gotten all the questions out of the way that I feel like I'd be interested in. Maybe anybody, you know, and I'm not going to start asking about recent dramas because that's not, frankly, really what you do anymore. But if you ever happen to see me talking about something on a specific topic, you want to come in and add stuff just to, you know, dabble back in your old commentary waters, you know, you're more than welcome to.
For sure. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, honestly, like, it was a fun conversation. I didn't expect it to go on this long, but you're just like a kind of laid back person to have a chat with, so it was nice.
Yeah, man. I try, man. I try. Anyway, Tip, thank you again, man. Appreciate it, brother.
All right, you have a good one.
You too, man. See ya. All right, everybody. Well, that was Tipster, everybody. I thought that was a good conversation. You know, I know that some of y'all probably wanted me to, you know, start some shit, but that's not my style, guys. You know, I hate to say it to you. I think we got enough spurgy people in the in the community right now. You don't need another one. But I just wanted to kind of have a nice chill conversation, and that's really it's pretty much it. I saw two people that we're gonna be having on soon in the chat. Xylie's gonna be coming on, and I need to. Yeah, it's. I mean, there were some stuff that I really feel like though, Xylie, he was really good. He would literally talk to me about any question I had. He wasn't being like shy. He didn't try to like avoid anything. I think that he was overall like 100% transparent. Now I don't know his history like you do. So obviously, you've been there for a lot of the controversies that I missed. Only being in the space for the past year and a couple months and change. But other than that, like, he didn't really owe me anything. He came on as a favor to one of the people who watch, and I feel like he was pretty chill, and I couldn't have asked for a better conversation. It's just like I said, I'm just a laid back dude, and that's just kind of how I operate. I guess that's really it. That's really it. I appreciate that, Xylie. And I'm going to tell everybody in the comments, like I always do, make sure you guys go check out Xylie. Also, go check out Tipster. Why not? Go check out Tipster. Very chill guy. Very chill guy. Seems like, I hope it was a good interview. I tried, Xylie. I started off with a little... I could tell that, like, when you're somebody like him who has been like under the scrutiny that he has, I felt like the best way to start off the conversation was just to talk about something. Oh my God, who is this beaver dude? I feel like this dude's just fucking doing this. Yeah, that's you, bro. That's you. Just in there, just talking shit for no reason. Oh man. Yeah, it's my fault. I gotta mod soul. Oh wait, that's my channel, bro. That's my channel. Well, Beaver's cool. Do you know him? All right. Well, then I take back the troll alert. If Xylie says you're cool, you're all right. You're all right. All right. You never know, because I know that Tipster gets so much hate that, I kind of would feel bad if I brought one just to be absolutely whipped up. But I know that, like, he knows he's a polarizing figure, and we've, I understand him coming on. He didn't really know what to expect. Plus, I just wanted to show Xylie my cool troll alert graphic that I made. But, like, he's coming on. He doesn't know. Oh, he is a troll. Oh, Beaver's from Now Recording. All right. Yeah, I've heard about you guys. Or girls. I haven't heard what sex you are, but I've heard I heard about y'all. But yeah, man, it was a nice conversation. Again, like, Tipster's coming into this conversation not knowing who I am, whether or not I'm going to try to set him up for like an own or something like that. And it just, it is what it is. But anyway, guys, I think that's where I'm going to end stream. Okay, guys. All right. Well, then welcome Now Recording. Happy to see you guys. And Beaver, I apologize for troll alerting you, but Zai says you are a troll, so it's deserved, but it's a positive troll alert. All right, positive troll alert. You got to have some people in there to disrupt things. That's the internet. Also, just skip the parts where I'm eating noodles, Ziley. My daughter made me. Oh shit. Yeah, you missed him, Nick. You missed him. You just missed him. But he would have been stoked to see you in the chat. Congratulations, by the way, Nick, on 100,000. That's pretty dope, man. It's pretty dope. You earned it. You earned it. I guess I'm officially in the commentary. I'm not like in the inner circle, but I'm officially commentary now that Nick Deorio shows up in your chat, you know? That's what happens. But oh shit, Nelson Mackle's here. I've always watched you guys from afar, but never did I think y'all were gonna be showing up in my chat. When Xylie's talking about beavers, she's really talking about yo, I'm not trying to get on the I'm not trying to get on the wide end of her stick, man. I'm not trying. I've seen what Xylee did to Himpleton the other night. I'm not trying to be any part of that. I prefer my streams to be Spurg free. But yeah, guys. I guess I'm gonna end it here, man. You know, I don't really know what else to say. I would just be sitting here boring you guys at this point now. But yeah, if you guys want to go check out my conversation with Tipster, just rewind a little bit. Starts off with a little Resident Evil talk, you know, to warm things up. Show them I'm not like trying to flex on them or whatever. And then all of you guys been mentioned at some point, so check it out. Except Smaggle. Sorry, Smaggle. I couldn't find a spot to throw your name in there. But next time, all right, next time I'll bring you up. But anyway, guys, much love. Peace out. I'll see you guys on the next one. Oh, and thanks again to my audience. You guys know who you are.